running to Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Breaking History. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick, and my co-host, Matt Ehret. Matt is in Europe right now, Prague, one of my favorite cities. How's Prague today, Matt?
Prague was wonderful, but we just got to Germany last night, so now we're in Germany, right next to Munster. So yeah, it's been chilly, damp, and beautiful. It's been an incredible experience with a lot of gorgeous architecture, a lot of very interesting history, especially coming at it with conspiratorial glasses, like we tend to wear, even though you don't wear them physically. That is a metaphysical reality, and so there's a lot that is picked up as far as patterns, symbolism, interesting dynamics of history that's been blowing my mind. So I would imagine that by next week or the week after, I'll have some stories to share. But so far, so good.
Awesome. Well, yeah. So Matt is working from a different computer today, so I will be show running, and we'll see how I do. But we have a really special treat for you today, because we are going to be joined by a guest here in a few minutes. We will introduce him in a moment. But first, let's hit an ad read, and today we're going to starting off with GART. So GART 10, Cocoa Beach. This was the first GART that I went to, GART 2. We went to Cocoa Beach, but same facility, awesome place, right on the beach in Florida. We actually got to watch the SpaceX launch one night out on the beach. Lots and lots of fun. And, that was my first time ever going to any sort of conference like this. And it was, you never know what to expect. I had never met anybody from Badlands before. And at that point, I think I was only writing for the Substack, but man, it was a game changer. Had so much fun and have been to everyone since. So I really encourage everybody, if you're in the area, please come out and join us. Single day ticket. I'm not sure if single day tickets are going to be available or not. This is one of the smaller venues I think we go to. But there is a special discount price for, I believe, both in-person and virtual tickets between now and October 15th. And I believe we're also having our first live stream for ticket holders tomorrow afternoon. So Matt, are you planning on joining us in Florida? I know last time you had a hell of an experience making it to South Dakota.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna miss this one. I'm still licking my wounds from
dude, no judgment. That was,
for those who don't know, what should have been a 4-hour trip from Montreal to South Dakota took me 42 hours in and 47 hours out. It was just cancellation, delay, all sorts of problems where the plane almost ran out of fuel and had to circle about for an hour before doing an emergency landing. And at the end of the day, I've slept on enough airport floors, so I needed just a couple of more months to recuperate before trying it again.
Yeah, well, anyway, we will miss you. But yeah, that was a hell of an odyssey. So yes, go to badlandsmedia.tv/events. I'm excited to see everybody there. I know a lot of people have already reached out and said they're going, so I'm pumped to see some familiar faces and maybe some new faces as well. badlandsmedia.tv/events. So with that said, today we are going to be joined by Eric Rice, and we're going to be talking about a topic that a lot of people have been asking for, the Jesuits. We've done a show on the Jesuits, but we don't. Neither one of us feel like we did it justice because we got sidetracked on so many little rabbit holes that we didn't really do a comprehensive study. So I'm going to bring Eric on.
Well, hey, Eric.
Hey, Eric. And I'm sorry, Matt, you did say you had a few quotes you wanted to read. So Matt, if you want to read those quotes, and then I'll introduce Eric.
Yeah, it's an amazing meeting you, Eric. I've heard many good things from Gordon about you, so I'm looking forward to what you have to say today about this topic that's been sort of hovering above for many months now, since we began plunging into this, dovetailing around it, dancing around it for quite a few episodes, promising that we'll do a deep dive, never really quite getting around to it. And it's a difficult, challenging, multi-layered topic to handle. So this is going to be, I'm very, very curious to see your take on this. Before we do, I'm just going to read, like Gordon just said, a couple of quick quotes Gordon, also, if you have that picture that I emailed you from one of the churches that Cynthia and I walked into in Prague the other day, that would be great to cue that up soon. Not yet. First up, I've got here, I'm going to add to the stage a part of an article that I'd published a few months back on UK Column, featuring which opens with a bunch of quotes from notable historical figures. Number one of being the Marquis of Lafayette. Here's a painting of the Marquis at the bottom by Samuel B. Morse, who's a painter and inventor. He himself was a French aristocrat who was won over to the American cause, and the idea of Republican reform of humanity as a whole was something that was close to his heart. And he wrote something in the wake of the American Revolution where he wrote, "It is my opinion that if the liberties of this country, the United States of America, are destroyed, it will be by the subtlety of the Roman Catholic Jesuit priests, for they are the most crafty, dangerous enemies to civil and religious liberty. They have instigated most of the wars of Europe." Further down, there's a couple of other quotes that were noteworthy, but Samuel B. Morse himself was, in 1835, he wrote a pamphlet which was widely read in the United States called Foreign Conspiracies Against the Liberties of the United States, where I'm not going to read the whole quote here, it's pretty big, but he makes the point here, if any are ignorant, let them inform themselves. Oh, do Americans need to be told what Jesuits are? If any are ignorant, let them inform themselves of their history without delay. No time is to be lost. Their workings are before you in every day's events. They are a secret society, a sort of Masonic order with superadded features of revolting odiousness, and 1,000 times more dangerous. They are not merely priests or priests of one religious creed. They are merchants and lawyers and editors and men of many profession, having no outward badge in this country by which to be recognized. They are about in all your society. They can assume any character, that of angels of light or ministers of darkness, to accomplish their one great end, the service upon which they are sent, whatever that service may be. And I'll just end with the third one by John Quincy Adams, who wrote, "Shall we not have regular swarms of them here, in as many disguises as only a king of the gypsies can assume, dressed as painters, publishers, writers, and schoolmasters? If ever there was a body of men who merited eternal damnation on the earth and in hell, it is this society of Loyolas." There's many more quotes in that article that I fused in there, but those were the three most noteworthy ones, I think, for the purpose of opening up this conversation. Here, let me just remove this from the screen for the time being.
Do you want me to add show these images?
Yeah, and the very, very last thing to throw in there before we just throw the ball over to Eric, walking into a number of very beautiful Prague churches, something caught my eye, which is that the IHS symbol, the Jesuit symbol, was ubiquitous in most of I'd say about out of 80% of the churches that I saw, that Cynthia and I saw, they were Jesuit run. Maybe they weren't Jesuit created, but they were Jesuit run over the years. That's the thing. And not only that, but there was something I'd also not really seen in many churches, which was the all-seeing eye of Horus, which presented itself in at least 3 of the churches that I walked into. And I walked into maybe 5. So there's probably a lot more if I extend that proportionally to the other churches that are, and there's still many. So that has a very strange place in a seemingly Christian church, the all-seeing eye of Horus. What's up with that? So yeah. just to say, there's something weird, and I have no doubt, and I'm sure that there have been many good people who have been Jesuits. Many good people over the years have been Jesuits, but there's something as an esoteric inner teaching that I think most of the members are not even privy to, who are seen as useful, disposable elements within the society. And so, Eric, I'd love to get your take on your research, how you're approaching this question of what are the Jesuits? How do we approach this? Where do they come from? What do we do about it?
Jeez, we can go on for days. Thanks for having me, guys.
Sure.
Yeah, the thing about Jesuits, Knights of Malta, Knights Templar, the Jews, all these things, they're very simplistic. They're very easy places for people to point fingers when things go wrong. Many of them are by design. Many of them are in disguise. But at the end of the day, these are all secret orders with public-facing entities. Freemasons, Illuminati, this whole thing, right? By the way, that image that you just showed from that Jesuit church is the same image that Napoleon showed to the Jews in around 1800 when he freed them in Italy. We'll get into that in just a moment. But when you look at these things, everyone's always trying to figure out who's the deep state. Well, let me say one thing. The fact that things are so obvious right now means they're not obvious. If you understand history and you understand how secret societies actually work, they will sacrifice their own to appease the crowd while they still operate in the darkness. And until the darkness is abolished, which can only be done by the return of Jesus, this is going to be life on earth. That is biblical prophecy. So the nature of the Jesuits is one that it's astounding. So it's one that I kind of dug into. I really got into World War II in like 2009, before anybody really started talking about any of this stuff. I had seen, Hitler war crimes were attributed to the Bolsheviks on some post somewhere, and I really dug into it. And let me preface this by saying that in the very beginning, this is not meant to offend anyone here personally. We're going to be talking about Jews, Catholics, Protestants. You're all probably really good people, but that doesn't mean that the institutions in which you go to worship are. Jesus never said to build a church building with Sunday schools and child ministries and LED lights and all these other things that are practiced in various denominations. And by the way, before we get into this, I think the word denomination is important to understand. Words matter. Like, they really matter. So the Bible, the gospel, is really just a series. The Old Testament is basically a history book. If you take it the right way, it's really a history book. It had prophecy in it, had promises from God to select people that were all fulfilled in Jesus Christ. The entire Old Testament was a physical representation of God that was fulfilled in the promise of bringing the Messiah to the earth, who was sacrificed and rose again for our sins to be forgiven. That is kind of the Bible in basic overlay. Now, these stories throughout the Bible, you can name anyone, Noah, Judah, anybody. Any story from the Bible is God's nomination. So the Bible is a recorded history of those who God nominated for his glory. That is what all the characters in the Bible are. Even the bad guys were nominated by God for his glory. Now, once Jesus died, we had, the Roman Catholic Church will tell you that their church began in 33 AD because Jesus, told Peter that he would be the church. I'm not going to get into biblical interpretations because that's really a whole different ball game. And I am very much a historian that studies the Bible along with history. That is what I look at, period. Because we have seen prophecy fulfilled, and that's why we're here where we are right now, because people are so confused. But I will say this, that once God nominated people for his glory to do things, good or bad, for his glory, to tell the story that there is an omnipresent being that controls all, that, by the way, gave the devil, Satan, dominion over earth. Until Christ returns, Satan will have dominion over the earth. Then we created religion. Christ created faith in God's promises, his fulfilled covenants, the future. And then religion became a thing. Many people will break down the word religion to say it means to re-legion. And the legions were the demons in the Bible who divided. So we've seen this, right? Like, we're living in 2025. Religions and denominations have never been more divided, ever. But that's not what's really happening. They're attempting to unify them. So what is a denomination? Right? Something that lowers or de-escalates the nomination of God. So every religion has this parsing from biblical scriptural teaching that gives them a creative edge, right? Something, we interpret prophecy differently. We have these rituals. We have these things. So I just find it funny that we call religion a denomination when the Bible is all about nominations. And I don't think many people have even mentioned this before, but the fact that we call them denominations is strange. So the Jesuits fit right in with what has happened. So it's important to note that everything attributed to Christians until around mid 1500s were all Catholics. There was only one religion on planet Earth, and that was Catholicism, led by the Pope, who sits on a throne with dominion over the church. Complete control of the church, was anointed or appointed to God. By the way, his letter from Constantine was proven to be a forgery. So, by the way, everything I'm going to tell you right now, you can go to Wikipedia. Some of it will be on there. Most of it will be debunked. And I'm going to show you the debunking here in just a second and how it's done. I don't know whether this stuff is true or not. What I do is I look at both sides of every story, whether it's a news story or a historical event, and I assess, you take in everything and you drop out what you can clearly tell is fake. Other than that, you have to assume parts of it are real. And history, people say history is a total lie. It's not a total lie. History is a half truth. It's not a lie. It's a half truth. It's not complete falsehood. There's half truth in everything. World War II being the largest one. And that's a huge, huge take on where we are today, because I can see the gaslighting and where it's going and where the end result is very clearly. All you have to do is go to Twitter. You can see it very clearly. So the Jesuits, who are the Jesuits? So the Jesuits were a third incarnation of a papal army of sorts. So you had the original papal army, which was the Knights Templar. Then you had the evolution of the Knights of Malta, who actually historically will take credit for banking as we know it today, not the Jews. That was the Knights of Malta, who were widely known as commercial bankers for a very long time. They were the bankers of the papacy. And then you had the Protestant Reformation, which I think is probably the most important turning point in human history. Are you guys familiar with that? Matt, I'm sure you are. Are you familiar with that, Gordon?
Not as much.
Okay, so
you're talking. Your question is the Reformation period?
Yes.
The Reformation period. I'm sorry, I misheard you. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm pretty familiar with like the 30 Years' War and the Reformation period, and yes.
Yeah. So you have this period of at that point in time around 1200 years, where the Pope was the deep state. He controlled all the monarchs on earth. All the monarchs on earth, all the kings submitted fealty to the Pope for a very, very long time. And then you had history overlay. So at this point in time, there were a bunch of Catholic monks and priests and cardinals and all kinds of ordained people within the Catholic Church that decided, led by Martin Luther, who decided, hey, this is not how Christianity is supposed to work. They were practicing indulgences. You can commit as much sin as you want, as long as you donate to the church, say some Hail Marys, you'll be forgiven by the Pope, not by Jesus, by the Pope. And Catholics will get really mad when I say this, but if you look at Latin writing in church and church doctrine and papal doctrine, there's two things that really stick out about the Catholic Church that should be questioned by everyone, including Catholics. I can't pronounce them. Extra ecclesia solum something means outside the church there is no salvation. Now, of course, the church spins that and says, of course, you need Jesus as well, but the church. So the Protestants started looking at this stuff, saying, what are these indulgences? How can a priest or a pope forgive you of your sins? Only Jesus can do that. So they got angry and bifurcated from the church. They broke off and created Protestantism. And the name Protestantism is a protestism to the Catholic Church, who they saw as the beast in Revelation, the beast that overwhelmed the earth through peace, right? The Pope is a man of peace. He sits on a throne. He's the man of peace. He provided peace, although there was no peace. So before all this happened, you have the Crusades, which occurred, which there's very strong ties to. Not necessarily. I don't want to be like everything we're going to say here. You guys are cool with this. We're all going to be called conspiracy theorists when this is over.
Yeah. Trust me, we've had all these conversations we've had, and yeah, we are. There's no subject here where we're that's taboo. So say whatever you want to say and be as honest as you possibly can.
I always do. That's all I know how to do.
Right.
So you have this, in this period of time previous, you have the Crusades where Islam was invading, Europe and trying to conquer Europe, and the Moorish invasion and all these things. But you can actually attribute the creation of Islam back to Catholics, not necessarily the church. That's difficult to do. But the sponsors of the Islamic faith, those who said this is a real religion. He saw, Muhammad spoke to an angel of light who masquerades as an angel of light. And they ordained it or proved it to be an official religion in around 600. So you have Christ dying at 31 or 33 AD or 35 AD. Nobody really knows for certain. The only people who would actually know for certain when Christ died would be the original church fathers who ended up forming the Roman Catholic Church. But at that time, you had some significant...
That's actually interesting, because I think I recall, like, when I looked into the origins of Islam, and I didn't go too deep, but I remember reading that Muhammad didn't know what this being was, and then he went and consulted Christian scholars, and they were like, "Oh, that was Gabriel." And
there were no Christian scholars then; there were only Catholic scholars then.
There you go. Yeah. So that's who told him that it must have been Gabriel, and that's who you saw. And then he said, "Okay, well then it was Gabriel," and that's the official like narrative now, as I understand it.
Go ahead, Matt.
Wasn't it also the person who officially inscribed what he had experienced onto paper himself, also a Catholic?
Yes.
Right.
All written by Catholics. Of the sponsors, 80% of the sponsors were former Catholics, now Muslims. including one of the largest endorsers who was an excommunicated Catholic monk. These are all verifiable. There's books, there's historical records. You can find all this stuff pretty easily. But the theory is that they created Islam to subvert Bible-believing Christians in the Middle East, because the Middle East, by the way, people think the Middle East is just overwhelmed with Islam. The Middle East was primarily Christian after the days of Christ for hundreds and hundreds of years, but they wouldn't submit to the Catholic Church and the Pope as the king. So the theory would be that the Catholics, not the Catholic Church, endorsed Islam to create an army to subdue the Christians in the Middle East. And that eventually got out of hand. This false religion got out of hand and ultimately turned against them. So that's when you had the Crusades, which the mainstream media will tell you Christians have killed millions of Muslims. Those weren't Christians. Those were Catholics. They were actually killing Christians in the Middle East as well, Bible-believing Christians who wouldn't be Catholic. So this has been going on a really long time. Then you have Constantine, who was the leader of Rome. You got to remember this too. When Christ was crucified, because these are, I'm going to try to cover big topics that are big on social media. I can get deep into history if you want, but one of the things that's happening right now is the Jews killed Jesus. That's true. So did the Romans. So did the Gentiles. So did all of Earth. Earth rejected Jesus. The Jews forced the hand of the Romans to actually pierce the skin, but it was a collaborative effort. Like, that's just biblical history. So you can't really blame it on anyone. The world rejected Jesus, and those who follow him are saved. That's kind of the whole point. But at that point in time, two big questions were asked at the time of basically the Inquisition of Christ. One question was, they say you are the king of the Jews. Is that true? Because people say, oh, nobody was more Jewish than Jesus. And I'm going to get into Judaism in a second. And the reality is that the question was answered very simply. My kingdom is not of this world. That answer could be taken as yes or no. It's definitely a no. I'm not the king of the Jews. I'm the son of God. The other question was, who do you pledge fealty to the Jews? And they said that we accept only Caesar as our king. That's a really big turning point in history. That's basically the Jews saying that we submit to Rome. Now, Rome is a procession. Basically, Satan has always had dominion on earth. All of these old sun gods, multi-gods, demigods, throughout all pagan history is littered with the sun, right? Like you just saw that eye of Horus and a triangle with beams from the sun coming out of it, all sunbeams. All the old Catholic pictures of Jesus have sun halo behind everyone in the church. There's a sun behind it. Now, this is what Rome worshipped. Back then it was called Mithra was the god that they were,
I think it was a Helios that Mithra was slaying the bull in honor to Helios that he was always looking over to. But Helios, Mithra was devoted to Helios, and Mithra was Sol Invictus. So it's the Sol Invincible, yeah.
And Matt, correct. you often mention the cult of Mithra. This is connected to what he's discussing now?
Yeah. Yes, it's the warrior cult of the Praetorian Guards. And it's basically warrior monks that were doing some nasty stuff to become enlightened, let's just say.
Oh, this is going to be great. Having Matt here is going to be amazing because I don't know how good I am at doing this. I'm not a history teacher, nor am I.
I'm just along for the ride. The chat needs to understand. I'm just along for the ride here.
None of us are proficient. Like, we're not academically proficient in history. We just we're all.
Which means we're more accurate,
own, right?
Huh? Yeah. Which means we're going to be more accurate because we're not compensated to not be.
Exactly. We're not handicapped.
So Mithra, the cult of Mithra and the Praetorian is a very big piece of this puzzle. So two things happen, right? Jesus denied being king of the Jews, and the Jews submitted fealty to Rome. Now, you got to remember the devil, the dragon from Revelation is the devil. Everyone knows that. He would pass his powers to the beast. And you can go back to Daniel and some of the visions that he had, the prophecy of the end times that he had. And essentially, the Jews gave their fealty to Rome. Rome followed, I'll probably get these wrong, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome. That is where the dragon passed his power. All of those empires dominated the known world. Rome was the new dominant of the new world. This is in the height of the Roman Empire, right? When Jesus was around. So very important things. So you have a few years of early church dissemination of scripture. Like, what does this mean? By the way, the Bible didn't exist at that time. It was just the Torah and parts of the Tanakh. So the Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible. The Tanakh is the first 5 books of the Bible, plus some of the prophets. So this is all you had to go on. The New Testament was being written. This is the time Paul is now, crusading around and going to different areas in Turkey and Greece and in Rome and preaching, and ultimately imprisoned in Rome, and writes Ephesians to Turkey and Ephesus, which was the home of witchcraft. So your normal church or pastor is going to say, oh, Ephesus was this beautiful, it kind of reminds me of modern day America. It's a beautiful place of commerce with a port, and it was just gorgeous with wealthy people. It was also the home of witchcraft, where people went to put curses on their enemies. Like if you were rich, you'd go to Ephesus and you'd curse people. So very big ties between Turkey and Rome. Now, then you have this early church interpretation where they were using a very significant term that the Catholic Church uses today, that the church is the mystical body of Christ. Follow? Mystical, very important word. Mystical, mystery Babylon. Many people attribute mystery Babylon to the mystical dark religion, or like Matt said earlier, the esoteric religion, hidden, occult. These are all the same terms. They're very synonymous in history. So now you have this early church interpretation by pagans who a few years ago believed in multiple gods, some Jews that believed in God himself, who are believing in Christ. So their interpretations, many people are saying, well, they didn't even believe the world would exist for another 100 years. So all these end times prophecies were 100 years out. So prophecy interpretation is very difficult to do. It kind of depends on what you believe. But then you have Constantine's conversion. So at this point in time, the Romans had slaughtered Christians all the way through the destruction of the Second Temple, which Jesus prophesied would happen while he was alive. You have the invasions of northern and southern Israel and Judea, captured by the Assyrians, captured by the Babylonians, which created modern day esoteric mystical Judaism and the Kabbalah. And then you have this 250-year gap where basically Christians were the most persecuted people on earth. We actually still are today. You just don't hear about it. All you hear about is the persecutions of everyone else, because everyone else isn't as important.
Donald Trump said that a few weeks ago. He said, nobody talks about it, but Christians are actually the most persecuted group, and you never hear about that. So it's just
ever.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, people don't realize Lebanon until the recent bombings by Israel was 40% Christian. So every time they bomb somewhere, the Christians flee.
My best friend growing up, I often say, was Lebanese. His father's family fled there, and they were devout Christians. And a lot of the guys around Trump, Tom Barrack, I think there's a few others. Tiffany Trump's father-in-law, Mossad Boulos. They're both Lebanese Christian. So there are lots of Christians in Lebanon.
Yeah, I'll preface this by saying, I've kind of removed myself from political ideology. Like I'm more biblical. I think that there's nothing can stop what's coming is what's coming, and I'll get to that. So then you have Constantine, who converts to Christianity. A few years later, you have the Catholic Church that was created with, Catholics will be angry at this, with plenty of pagan symbolism, as Matt just showed in a Jesuit church in Prague. Still very pagan, very much pagan symbolism. You have 7 rays of light, all these Catholic things that go back to the code of Mithra, and they're intertwined. So the Catholic Church became this massive power on earth because Christianity was dominating. The thing about Jesus that's amazing is he conquered the most powerful, violent empire in the world without unsheathing a sword. Only the Son of God can do that. I mean, he didn't ever do anything violent. He never promoted a revolt even. That's what he was accused of course, which is violation of thou shalt not bear false witness, that the Jews broke a commandment directly in front of the Romans, in front of God, in front of the Son of God. But then you have this long run, and through that time, again, Islam gets out of hand. These Catholic ties to the Islam religion. Catholics, go into the Crusades. The funny thing is, online, people will say the Protestants were too cowardly to fight in the Crusades. It was only Catholics. There were no Protestants. They didn't exist. So there's so much false information going around in religion and scripture. And then you have this Protestant Reformation. Protestant Reformation that's when the Jesuits were formed, right? It's within 6 years of the Protestant Reformation. So previous to this, the Catholic Church had their private army and the Knights Templar. Then they had their private army / banker who enslaved Jews, the Knights of Malta. And then you have this new section of their secret military arm. And all this stuff will be on Wikipedia. This is debunked, blah, blah, blah. It's totally true. So you have the Jesuits. And the Jesuits were highly intelligent because they were created by St. Ignatius. St. Ignatius and 8 Jews, by the way, surrounded St. Ignatius, who many people believe was a converso. Conversos were kind of the first secret society in Spain, because conversos were Jews that were persecuted for all the things that you can read about. All the stuff is very historically documented, lending, usury, stuff with children, blood sacrifice, all that stuff. These accusations are very real. Whether it happened or not, I wasn't there, so I don't know. I believe it because I've read the Talmud and I know what it says in there. But all these people practice Kabbalah. Kabbalah goes back to Egypt. So people will attribute Kabbalah to the Jews, but it's actually Egypt transferred into Babylon. Now, the Jews were exiled to Babylon. All the smartest, all the highest ranking people were transferred there. And the first ever synagogue is attributed to being built in Babylon. And they do practice Kabbalah, which is now coming out in the open. This is the secret esoteric religion Satan's preaching on how to have world dominance and basically become a rancher. Because the world is built of two things, cattle and ranchers. You know, our CIA trains at a place called the farm. And they call it the farm for a reason, because they're training ranchers to rattle up the cattle and get them to move in whatever direction they want. This idea stems from the Jesuits. The Jesuits were the ones who created psychological warfare, 5th generation warfare today. The only difference between what the Jesuits did back then and today with psychological warfare is that we have advancements in technology. All they had was the printing press. The printing press and the Protestant Reformation went hand in hand. So they were decentralizing religion. Yeah. Right. So they could print their own versions. Then you have, the first guy,
1440 Gutenberg, and then that leads to the Protestant Reformation. And then when you talk about the conversos in Spain, is that referring to like 1492 when the Jews were expelled from Spain?
Yeah, it's fascinating. Like we have the 1492 Columbus sailed the ocean blue. The add to that poem, you could say, who probably was a Jew, because the letters he wrote back to his son. He wrote 13 letters to his sons, and 12 of the 13 had Hebrew inscriptions in them. So these Jews who were practicing Talmud and like the Jews have multiple different books, the Torah, the Tanakh, very holy. And then you have these mystical Babylonian teachings in the background that are in every temple and synagogue. The
Zohar, right? The Zohar.
Yeah, these are all, these are all oral traditions that apparently nobody ever got wrong since, the days of Moses. No, nothing's ever wrong.
Here's an interesting tidbit there that I picked up on as well. Just going through a lot of the we were about, like I said, in Prague for about a week, and there's a big Jewish history in Prague. That's where the idea of the golem, the story of the golem from Prague comes out of.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a notable clash within Jewish society between the mystical Kabbalistic Jews that were following the Zohar, which itself, they say it's like so ancient, written, as the story goes, in the times of even, pre-Christian, some people say 2nd century, but the reality is all the earliest documentation we have of the Zohar is like from the early 13th century, or mid 13th century, from like Moses
1200s. Yes. 1200s.
So it seems that, and then the guy said, "Oh yeah, I was just recopying it in my own hand from a really ancient text that nobody has ever seen except me." It's like, come on. But there was a clear battle between like the philosophical Torah rabbinical Jews that prefer to think about the actual moral lessons within the Jewish Bible and within the Pentateuch, and actually think about like living a good ethical life, and then you had their opponents within the Kabbalistic mystical network who were saying, no, you can't use your mind. The more you think, the more you separate yourself from God. You have to use secret mystical symbolism and altered states that will help you get into through the workings of these different what are basically grimoires and keys to grimoires that help you like tap into demonology, angelology, and other things that have like an outward nice surface appearance, and then the deeper you go, the more dark the opposite game really becomes more clear, where what you thought was good at the beginning of your journey actually is evil, and what you thought was evil is actually good. Surprise. But yeah, there are these interesting battle lines even within the contours of Judaism itself, which is fascinating.
Easy to describe though, because let me dispel some biblical myths. So you also hear this online. Oh, the whole Bible is about Jews. That's not true. It's like 5 to 7% of the historical figures in the Bible are Jewish. Everyone before Judah was a Hebrew and Israelite. They also have Macedonians, Armenians, all these other people in there, not just Jews.
Yeah, Greeks, right?
Yeah, Greeks, Romans. I mean, they came from everywhere. Even, so the lineage is pretty simple. God blessed Abraham, not Israel. We all know this from the Schofield Bible. It literally clearly says Abraham. Abraham passed that blessing on to Isaac. Isaac passed that blessing on to Jacob, who changed his name to Israel. Israel had 12 sons. One of his sons was Judah. One of his other sons was Joseph. Now, Israel/Jacob, he wanted to pass the blessing on to Joseph. He made that known. I'm going to pass God's blessing on to Joseph. The other 11 sons conspired to kill him until Judah, who was the father of the Jews, said, why would we kill him? Kind of don't let a crisis go to waste. Let's sell him into slavery for silver, just like Judas sold Jesus for silver. So this is everyone before Judah was not a Jew. They were an Israelite. God didn't free the Jews from Egypt. He freed the Israelites and a mixed multitude, which means Israelites and other people. So they came back into Israel, Moses and Joshua. Joshua ended up creating the two empires, the north and the south, Judah and Israel, Israel in the north, Judah in the south. Israel was eventually fell into Babylonian practices and devil worship. By the way, all this region was called Canaan before that. Canaan is Babylonian mystical esoteric religion, the religion of the ages, those who want global world domination. They want others to submit to them, which Jesus was a servant who washed the feet of his apostles. He was the servant. He didn't want servants. That's the difference between Christianity and everything else. So when they finally get into Egypt, God's commandment was to exterminate the Canaanites. Now, when Joshua, who was a spy, went ahead, he said, these people are scary. They're eating babies. They're sacrificing babies and then eating them afterward. They're practicing sexual indulgence and all this sin, the Babylonian lifestyle. That was the Canaanites. And Babylon's what no one thinks of Babylon. And like, that was a cool place, like a holy place. I want to be there. So they got scared and they just settled. They didn't kill the Canaanites. So Judaism by itself has always been strongly correlated with the mystical esoteric religion of the ages, which comes out of Egypt and Babylon and all these other places, which is clearly the false light, right? Like the darkness, the devil's influence on man. You can go back to like books of Enoch and show if you believe in that side. It's not Bible. It's not part of the Bible, but it's interesting. The fallen angels fell with Lucifer and taught man sin. That all these things are voluntary by man, and they're always tricked into it. Nobody ever goes, man, I want to fall into sin. The devil tempts you with things that it's not going to be that bad. Just go ahead and bite off that apple. It's not. Who's God to tell you what to do? So this esoteric religion has always been intertwined with Judaism. But at the end of the day, they got that land back with Joshua and Moses. They came back. They divided the kingdoms into Israel in the north, Judea in the south. And Joshua writes in his book, I think it's chapter 21 in the Bible, that all the Abrahamic promises have been fulfilled, right? So this whole idea of Israel, this is biblical prophecy. They got their land back. It's totally like Dinesh D'Souza's all over the place going, this is biblical. It's not biblical prophecy. That promise had already been fulfilled, and you fell into sin again. That promise, that covenant came with conditions. And they did not meet the conditions, and that's why they were taken as slaves. The north was taken as slaves by the Assyrians, and the south by the Babylonians. That's where history gets blurred, but it's very black and white if you're actually reading the words of the Bible and not listening to a pastor on a stage. Because all these denomination, what are for very easy to put in there, you switch two letters around, you have demonation, right? Like this is kind of how it works. The devil twists things in very small ways to eliminate the word of God. So now we find ourselves in this strange position where we have this biblical prophecy being fulfilled, the land of Egypt, the Jews have returned. Where did this all come from? Well, you can tie it back together with the Protestant Reformation, who came out and accused the papacy as being the first beast, who dominated the world through peace. The man of peace literally controlled the kings of the world. The world was run on monarchies. Everything was a king and fealty and serfdom. That's how the world has worked for all but 250 years of human existence. So this wasn't working out for the papacy because people were leaving the Catholic Church. Indulgences were down. You got to remember the Vatican, today the Vatican, always the papacy. They're the richest organization on planet Earth. They have all the wealth from the Crusades and from the Inquisitions. That's what they did. And all the indulgences, all the rich men who would find themselves in hedonism, they would become Catholic. They would go to a priest. They would give them a mountain of gold, say a few prayers, and the priest would forgive them for their sins. That's how the church worked at the time. So massive amounts of wealth. So when this Protestant Reformation began, along with the printing press, you have guys like Tyndale who translated the Bible because the Catholics only wrote the Bible in Latin in England. So nobody in England could read the Bible. They just had to go to church and be taught what it said in the Bible by a Catholic priest. Now you have Orthodoxy breaking off along with Protestantism. Everything stems from the Roman Catholic Church, and everyone trying to find their way back into actual scripture. That's really what the good intent is. But along with this, you had like Tyndale translated the Bible into English. The 400 or 500 year anniversary of him being burned at the stake is also a thing online that I'm seeing. So here you have the Catholic Church in a Catholic region with a Catholic controller A Protestant translates the Latin Bible into English so that people can read it for themselves, and he's burned at the stake. Now, online, people are saying, I can't believe the Protestants burned this guy at the stake. There were no Protestants. They had no power. They couldn't even have enough manpower to be able to wrangle this guy up and burn him. And why would they do it after he translated the Bible for them? So you see how history gets twisted quite a bit? So this Protestant Reformation needed psychological operations. And that's when the papal prophecy changed and focused on the Jews. And that's what everyone's, this whole new idea that physically the Jews have to return to physical Israel, despite the fact that a strong Christian will understand that the Old Testament was a physical book of God's physical promises, and that Jesus talked about, I have a kingdom, it's not of this world. Circumcision of the heart, not circumcision of the flesh. It's a very spiritual translation. So any Christian who believes that the Jews are the chosen people has already denied Christ, saying that there will be two messiahs and two people. There is one person. The church became Israel. Christian Zionists have been trained. Gosh, guys, they get trained since they're like 2 years old for this prophecy interpretation, which is completely illiterate. And they get trained for this. So if you're saying that there needs to be a Jewish Messiah now and the Messiah, the actual Messiah of God, you have already denied the gospel. And nowhere in the Bible does it say that there's a second Messiah, that the Jews are separate from all Jews, Gentiles, Greeks are now grafted into the vine through the Spirit of God to become the spiritual Israel of God. It's very clear in the Bible. Unless you want to contort one line here, one line there. I'm a holistic reader. So I read things to learn the story and tell the story. I don't focus on the minutia, because the minutia is how the devil contorts things, especially in Scripture. So that's where we kind of have this place. Where did this all begin? So you have the Protestant Reformation who needed Jesuits. So the Jesuits really loved what was happening. By then, the secret societies were Knights of Malta, Knights Templar. I'm going to pull this up here from my email because I sent it to myself, which I never do on camera. I'm going to read this to you if you guys don't mind. This is, by the way, this has been debunked by Wikipedia, the Catholic Church. It's been debunked by everything, but I'm going to read to you what they say. So one of the Jesuits actually leaked, the story goes, one of the Jesuits leaked this story or this oath. This is the oath, theoretically, that the Jesuits take when they join the Jesuit order or the Society of Jesus. And they always do this. Like Freemasons, we just build stones. Freemasonry is totally Kabbalistic. And by the way, the word cabal, like we use, there's a global cabal, that comes from Kabbalah. So when you look at this oath, I'm going to read it to you now. It says, this is what a Jesuit has to pledge when they become a Jesuit. I am now in the presence of Almighty God, the Blessed Virgin Mary, and the Blessed Michael the Archangel, the Blessed Saint John the Baptist, and my ghostly father, the Superior General of the Society of Jesus, founded by Saint Ignatius Loyola, due by the womb of the Virgin. Swear that His Holiness the Pope and Christ Vice Regent, and is the true and one head of the Catholic Church or Universal Church, because Catholic means universal. I do now renounce and disown any allegiance is due to any heretical king, prince, or state named Protestant or liberal, or obedience to any of their laws or magistrates or officers. I do further declare the doctrine of the Church of England and Scotland and the Calvinists and the Huguenots and others in the name of Protestant or liberal to be damnable and themselves be damned, who will not forsake His name. I do further promise and declare that notwithstanding I am dispensed with, to assume my religion heretical, for the propagation of Mother Christ interests, to keep secret and private all of her agents, counsels, and from time to time as they sorry, it's a bad copy. I can't see what that word is. Not divulge directly or indirectly by word, writing, or circumstances whatsoever. So I will keep all the secrets that you give me. I do furthermore promise and declare that I will, when opportunity presents, make and wage relentless war secretly or openly against all heretics, Protestants, and liberals, as I am directed to, extirpate them from the face of the earth, and that I will spare neither age, sex, or condition, and I will hang, burn, waste, boil, flay, strangle, and bury alive those infamous heretics, rip up the stomachs and the wombs of the woman, and crush their infants' heads against the walls in order to annihilate their inexorable race. So again, they took a religion, made it a race. This is very common in theological interpretations. That when the name cannot be done openly, I will secretly use the poisonous cup. Very important, because they poison presidents and popes. The strangulation cords, the steels of the poignard, or the leaden bullets, regardless of honor, rank, dignity, or authority of the persons, whatever may be their conditions of life, either public or private, as I at any time may be directed by any agent of the Pope or the superior of the Holy Father of the Society of Jesus, which is the general or the Black Pope. A lot of people talk about the Black Pope. He's the general of the Jesuits. In confirmation of which I hereby dedicate my life, my soul, and my corporal powers. And with this dagger, which I now receive, I will subscribe my name written in my blood and testimony thereof. And I should prove, if I should prove false or weaken in my determination, may my brethren and fellow soldiers of the militia of the Pope, cut off my hands and feet and my throat from ear to ear, rip my belly open, and sulfur burn therein, and all punishment that can be inflicted on me on earth, and my soul to be tortured by a demon in eternal hell forever. In testimony thereof, I take this most holy and blessed sacrament of the Eucharist, and witness the same further with my name written in the point of the dagger, dipped in my own blood, and sealed in the face of the Holy Covenant. So that has been debunked by Wikipedia and Jewish groups and Catholic groups forever. And there are many books that talk about this, like Foxes and Firebrands. Oh, go ahead, Matt. I'm gonna pull up something else here.
Yeah, I would just be very careful with that quote, just because. And I almost included that in my book, but then I'm glad that you're saying that it's still not 100% sure. Correct. That it does have a little, like, when I read stuff like that personally, and I know it was made public in 1883, but it does have like a little bit of an air of like stoke the fires of the mob against an enemy image. Like it
all of it does.
Sort of that feeling, that same smell I got from the Protocols of Zion, which has certain elements of truth infused into something that might be otherwise designed to undermine the overarching argument that could be made for the insidiousness of the Jesuit operation more generally, which is, I just don't usually see people writing in such a like
voracious way.
Yeah, it's a little cartoonish almost. So I don't know.
Totally. That's why I said multiple times this has been debunked.
Yeah,
it exists.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you said that.
But if you and of course we weren't there. But of course, the fabrication, you can go to AI, is this oath real? They'll say no, it's a Texas fabricated oath. It's been debunked, Jesuit conspiracy theories. So when I see that kind of debunking, it kind of gives, the one thing I found out about, I can tell you about history, is that it's all a half truth. It's not all a lie.
One thing that's a big one that caught my eye was the oft-cited Albert Pike forecast or prophecy in his letters to Mazzini in like 1873, where he forecast the three world wars. Yeah. And that actually, I'm quite convinced that is a forgery, but was slipped in the 1940s into the Masonic archives in Washington, because there actually are real letters between Pike and Mazzini, which are really revealing about the nature of what was the Order of the Golden Circle and the Knights of Malta operation inside of the Confederacy that was like trying to break apart the U.S. under the designs of Mazzini and Palmerston. But then what people then do is then they say, oh, well, if that's false, then we can discard all of the letters completely.
That's right.
And, they tend to do this a lot. It's very dirty how they slip stuff into the archives and then use that as a way to safeguard themselves from future counterattacks.
Yeah. So, so when you make something so obvious yet telling half truth, it allows you to debunk and protect, because the Jesuits are like every other secret society, like Freemasons, right? Freemasons sponsor our Little League field, right? There's the local Freemasons were, George Washington's headstone in Washington, D.C. says Freemason. Oh yeah. And by the way, president, right? So like Freemasonry is very real. We know, like, people have been talking about Freemasons forever, and they've been talking about Jews and Zionists and Kabbalic synagogues and all these other things, but nobody ever talks about the Jesuits. So the Jesuits, around this time, about 50 years later, ended up going to South America with the Spaniards. And you probably won't find it on Wikipedia, but there's books about the Jesuit reductions. So they basically go to South America in the name of the Holy Roman Catholic Church, which, by the way, it went from the Roman Empire to the Holy Roman Empire when Catholicism took over. So it's holy now. So what was once pagan is now Christ. Like all these branding things you see throughout history are fascinating, because at the end of the day, these people are being led by the devil. Like, that is my personal belief, that darkness overwhelms the earth. That is the entire purpose of understanding Christianity. Life will not get better until Christ returns. That is prophecy. But you have this time where the Jesuits go to South America in the name of the Holy Roman Catholic Empire. And they established themselves colleges and universities and education and all the stuff you see online. Oh, look beautiful. Well, what they were really doing is that they were convincing the local tribes of these Indians in Paraguay and some other places. They were convincing them that they were God, that the Catholic Church was the seat. And by the way, the Pope in papal doctrine doesn't say it in churches, but papal doctrine, they call him like a victorious Christi, which is Latin for in place of Christ, which would be an antichrist. Right. So these are all the things that the Protestants picked up, and they started accusing the Catholic Church of being the beast with the Antichrist, the man of sin who sits upon a throne. These are all from the Protestant Reformation, still applicable today. But they began basically creating communism. So they took over these, swaths of land. Online, it'll say 100,000 people is more like 2.5 million people from the writers of that period. And they were basically forcing these people to work 15, 16-hour days, gathering up all the harvest, mining for silver, all these other things, and then giving them a minimum wage, kind of like a communist would do. Like, go work the fields, we'll pay your bills, but you work for us. And there is no God above us. They were trying to embed that. Then the Spaniards heard about it and the Portuguese heard about it. And that's when they first kicked out the Jesuits from their country. So people always talk about the Jews been kicked out from 109 nations, which is true, over 1,000 times, which is true. The Jesuits have been kicked out of around 100 nations as well for stoking revolutions, for rigging elections after the French Revolution, for being involved in murder of kings and monarchs and popes. They've been accused of this throughout all of history. But they're the Society of Jesus, and they just set up colleges. By the way, Georgetown University was the first Jesuit university in this country. Look at all the people who've come out of Georgetown. Look at all of them. Like, you can look through, like, the whole conspiracy world focuses in on right now. It's just the Jews. Oh, it's totally the Jews run the world. That's what I would want you to think. Yeah. Right. Go ahead.
I got a great quote from Pope Clement the 14th in 1773, who had banished the Jews from Europe. And he says, and I quote, "The suppression is accomplished. I do not repent if that." Sorry, I'll just read that again. The suppression is accomplished. I do not repent of it, having only resolved on it after examining and weighing everything, and because I thought it necessary for the Church. If it were not done, I would do it now, but this suppression will be my death. And this guy he did actually die a few months later, though he did banish the Jesuits from continental Europe more broadly for about 50 years. And it took them 50 years from 1773 until 1815 to be reconstituted back in Europe as sort of the strong arm, the police force of the Holy Alliance. But that's a big deal. And it's interesting that a Pope himself saw such a threat in this order that he went to war with them. And there's a big number, there's a surprisingly large number of popes that die mysterious deaths before their time. And usually you'll find that they're stepping on the toes of the Jesuits, which people say, oh, that's just an instrument. There's this overly simplistic analysis that it's just, oh yeah, that's the instrument of the Pope on the earth. But it's like, no, it sometimes is, but sometimes there's this other thing where it's also keeping the powers of the cardinals of the papacy also in check, so it represents something even other or high above even that, which is just a fantastic irony.
Yeah, and then you talk about 1773, and then the reinstating of the Jesuits in 1814. In 1816, it's interesting because Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter to John Adams, and there's a quote from that letter: "I dislike with you their restoration because it marks a retrograde step from light towards darkness. We shall have our follies without doubt. Someone or more of them will always be afloat, but ours will be the follies of euthanism, not of bigotry, not of Jesuitism." So like, he was already saying at that point in time, this was a huge mistake to reinstate them into the order of the papacy. Now, the theories are that Pope Clement was poisoned because, again, that oath says we will kill by the poisonous cup. The theory is that the Jesuits poisoned Pope Clement for removing him from the country, which makes sense. There's no proof of that, but it totally makes sense. These guys who've killed kings and monarchs in the past. So then what did they start doing around this time? Then you have the French Revolution, which is very well documented that the Jesuits were heavily involved with the Jacobins. The Jacobins had the red hats. Those are also a tribute to Mithra. Those hats are exact Mithra soldiers, Roman soldiers. So I always find it interesting on the internet where the people have these videos like, why does my husband think about the Roman Empire? Because you're still living in it. It never ended. The Roman Empire never ended. Everything in Washington, D.C. is Roman-esque. The Roman Catholic Church has controlled the world. The Protestants called them out. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. That's just history. And history in a broad enough scale doesn't lie. Like, the stories make sense. Whether you can prove it or not is a different story, and none of us can. But I find it interesting at that point in time that you have this monarch in France. So they kick the Pope out, right? The Pope kicked them out. Pope dies. And then a few years later, you have the Jesuits heavily involved with the Illuminati and Adam Weishaupt, who created the Illuminati, in this revolution. So until the French Revolution, the whole world was run on monarchs. They were all monarchy. A king sat above everyone, told them what to do. That king pledged fealty to the Pope. That's basically how the world worked for a very long time, about 1400 years. Then you have this revolution where you have these Jesuits, or whatever you want to call them, because they're all the same. Like, you just give them names, like Jesuit, Freemason. They're all the same. These are all different clubs of the big club that none of us belong to, right? These are all just denominations of esoteric mystery, Babylon, darkness, Satanist, Luciferian. You remember Lucifer masquerades as an angel of light. So you'll have the Freemasons. Oh, they just work at Little League, but why are all of Freemasons presidents? So they're not just guys who work at like local Little League, sponsored events and things like that. And they all do good things. The Society of Jesus does good things for the public. The Freemasons do good things for your communities. It's not all of them. It's this darker, higher initiated club that gets closer and closer to the understanding of what their society actually is. And once you're in till death. It's like a mafia. Best example I give of this, because everyone's seen this show, of how all of this actually works, is Breaking Bad. You guys seen Breaking Bad? I think everyone has at this point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gus in Breaking Bad is the best way to explain how successful secret societies work. Gus was this nerdy guy with his shirt tucked in and glasses, very proper, around town. He's the nice guy. He's just the Pollos Hermanos guy. He's so good. He donates to all the charities. He's always here for this. He closes the door, and he's a drug lord that'll kill you in 3 seconds. But his public appearance is like this humble little man, walks around, maybe in a white robe. Oh, the Pope, he's so nice. But then you have verifiably Knights Templars, Knights of Malta, and the Jesuits that work for the Pope, that pledge allegiance to the Pope. This is how the darkness works. This is how the synagogue of Satan works. People always say, it's a synagogue, not a church. No, synagogue at the time, again, created in Babylon. And a synagogue just represents a house of worship in Scripture. So it's those who are in a house of worship claiming to praise Christ that actually worship Satan. It doesn't mean if you go to a Catholic church or Methodist church or any of these places that are messed up, or dispensational church, that you're a bad person. That doctrine is false in many ways, all of them. And at the end of the day, just look what's happening with megachurch pastors right now. There's one right by me in Dallas, Hugh Hope. He had to leave the church because he got caught with sexual indulgences. Another guy here, Gateway, pedophilia. Priests, pedophiles, rabbis, pedophiles. These are the synagogue of Satan, those who profess to love God in public, who praise Satan in the darkness. Not all of them, but it's some of them. So remember, Gus from Breaking Bad is a perfect example of all of these secret societies. Public facing good, inwardly very deep, dark, evil, and murderous. So the French Revolution by itself did 3 things, because all of human history is pretty dull. Catholic Church ran the world. Monarchs ran the world. You had some crusades. You had some inquisitions. By the way, the inquisitions, way more Christians died. They were killing heretics, which were Protestants who didn't want to bend a knee to the Pope. That's what the inquisitions began as. And then they started doing it to Jews and Muslims and everyone else. But it really was just to kill. Protestants disagree. We need to kill them. That's the Inquisition, like summarized very eloquently and simply. And then they started to realize that we can't control these monarchs. The monarchs were revolting against the Pope. So they decided they needed a whole new way of managing the cattle. So they perform a revolution in France, and you can get deep into dark in that, all the orgies that occurred and the sin, and the priests at the time were involved in all this darkness like they are today. Like it's going to be next year. It's going to be that way in 50 years until Christ returns. But they created 3 things that really came out of the French Revolution. Number 1, the 2-party system, Republican, Democrat, red hat, blue hat. That came out of the French Revolution. A quote-unquote decentralized government. So you did decentralize from 1 monarch into 2 candidates, and then parliaments and all these other things. But more importantly, you got a whole new wave of quote-unquote Christianity that never existed before. The 1800s are probably the most crucial time in human history to truly understand where we are today, because that's when you had dispensationalism with Darby and Schofield in the 1900s, all these guys creating a whole new, the Jews are the chosen people. This focus in on physical Jews, physical Israel, created this dissension. Then you had Mormonism, where John Smith saw an angel of light that told him that there are New Testaments, and the Bible tells you very clearly, if an angel comes to you and tells you there are further testaments, do not believe them. That is not of God. Now you have Mormonism.
In the golden Egyptian hieroglyphs on top of it.
Yes, buried in New York, just randomly in New York. And now you have Mormonism, you have dispensationalism, you have preterism, which preterism looks at the world and says, well, Jesus already returned, because right after 70 AD, that's when Revelation was. And it actually makes, the thing is, these all make sense. Like, to the physical brain, they can make sense. You can fall into these dispensational, preterist, Mormonist things that happen. And all of these were led by Jesuits. Every one of these new denominations have Jesuit ties to them. Darby has ties to Jesuits. By the way, Darby, people don't know this about Darby. I forget the name, but his family bought the most haunted castle in the world. He grew up in the most haunted castle in the world, and his sister wrote an article about how she summoned demons. This is the father of dispensationalism. And Moses Hess, who taught Darby, was actually called the communist rabbi. That was his nickname, the communist rabbi.
Yeah. Wait, Moses Hess, I did not know that. Moses Hess taught Darby?
Yeah, Moses Hess kind of kicked off the whole thing, but it all began during the 1800s.
I did not know that. Wow.
No, so the 1800s were fascinating, because Napoleon went on his conquest, gets to Rome, finds a bunch of Jews wearing yellow armbands and yellow hats with the Star of Remphan. It's actually not the Star of David. No Jew can tell you the Star of David, the Star of Remphan, or Kiun.
Written in the Bible. Written in the Bible. Yep.
And he sees that they're locked up in these ghettos. So a Jesuit puppet, like everyone knows that Napoleon was a Jesuit puppet. The Jesuits were involved in everything happening in France. And he finds the Jews, and he becomes the Jewish savior. Remember, the Jews didn't believe in Jesus because they thought they would have a conquering warrior king, a physical leader that would lead them into, dominance on earth, that the Jews would rule the world for 1,000 years with Jesus Christ, like that, or with the Messiah. So they denied Jesus because he was not of this world, and he was talking about a spiritual kingdom. They didn't believe he was the Messiah because of that. But they started to believe that, ironically, Napoleon Bonaparte was their Messiah. So he is the one who invented the idea that the Jews should have their own country. Well, who gave him that idea? The Jesuits. There's tons of books on this stuff you can read. So, and these are all theories. We don't know. We weren't in the room, right? This is just looking at history. But the idea of Jewish Zionism began with Napoleon. By the way, Napoleon, a relative of Napoleon, was one of the founders of the FBI in America. I found that fascinating to understand. There is a Bonaparte who was part of the creation of the FBI.
Yeah, Charles Bonaparte, he was the Attorney General of the United States under Teddy Roosevelt, who set this thing up in 1907. And it's wild too. Right? And also another Churchill was the founder of what becomes the NSA, the Black Chamber in 1918. Marlborough Churchill. So you got these Churchills and Bonapartes setting up these evil institutions in America, pass themselves off as American patriots in their own time, which is just the oddest of things, eh?
Yeah, well, this is all of history, and it's still continuing today, right? So,
and again, the issue of Napoleon, I think that's super important too, because he, even though people say, oh yeah, he was cracking down on Freemasonry and all these things, well, no, not really. I mean, he did portray himself as the new emperor of the world, and he did push for a new sort of Anglican or French version of the Anglican church that would see him as the head of the church, this Galatian church. And I think it was his brother, was the Grand Master of the French Grand Orient, and a whole myriad of Masonic orders at the same time that were being reconstituted with the Scottish Rite as well at that same time. And his son was a high initiate of the Grand Orient, and you could only be in that particular lodge an initiate if you were the son of a Grand Master. So he himself, there's so many data points that prove that Napoleon himself was that, and this other data point that you're bringing up, which also ties into Darby and Zionism, is that Darby's ideas of premillennial dispensationalism and that of the entire Plymouth Brethren emerged out of this these Aylesbury conferences.
Yes.
From 1828 to 1830, there were these series of conferences, and in it was overseen by the Archbishop of
Canterbury.
Yeah, thank you, Canterbury.
Yeah.
And what he had dug up, somehow this Archbishop of Canterbury had gotten access to the Vatican archives and found the works of Jose Rivera, who is a leading Jesuit overseeing the Council of Trent, So that was the Jesuit counter gang operation against the Protestant movement starting up in the 1545 period. And this guy, Jose Rivera, was the first one, at least, to formulate in a way which is recognizably Darby-esque, this notion that to interpret Revelation in Scripture, we have to get all of the Jews to go back into the desert, reconstitute, even though they don't like the Jews, but they
hated them.
No, they hate them, but they're like, we have to use them as a way to make prophecy happen, and then usher in this new age, this reset that will sort of manifest on earth what is written in the book of Revelation. But again, it's a Jesuit, Rivera, whose writings were rediscovered. It formed the basis of this 1820, whatever, late 1820s Congress of Aylesbury that then set up out of that in 1830, the Plymouth Brethren, out of which Darby comes up and, adds to it a little bit, but it's pretty much the same thing, which also calls for, interpreting things from the standpoint that God dispenses his will onto the earth in every 1,000-year cycles, pretty much.
Which is Kabbalistic.
Very Kabbalistic. Absolutely. Yeah. And also theosophical too. Like he was in his later years, even in the same circles as Madame Blavatsky towards the end of his life, and clearly part of the same occult network the whole time. So yeah.
Yeah, all of these 1800s denominations that came out all have occultic ties. They all have Jesuit ties. They all have Jewish ties. And what you'll find out is that the deeper you dig into this is that the Jews are not innocent in this. Like, that's not what I'm trying to say at all. The Jews are just always the scapegoat. They're the whipping boy. They're the one that they put out front so everyone hates them and looks somewhere else. Yeah. But the Freemasonic ties are absolutely fascinating because, World War II, the story right now is, look at the flip of the script on World War II. Oh, Hitler was this nationalist Christian Catholic, and he was just, he was just trying to save his country. He opened the door with the Havara Agreement to send the Jews in to occupy Israel. He was part of this too. There is not a single person throughout all of history that isn't tied to this. The deeper you look, the more you will see this. But he was also like the SS modeled their entire structure for training around the Jesuits. It was Himmler who created the SS. Even he said, "I admire the Jesuits and their dedication to their cause. We shall construct an SS around the models of the Jesuits." At the same time, they arrested and killed 30 Jesuits. Mm-hmm. So they will sacrifice their own to keep things hidden behind the agenda. Yep. And, he promised a golden age of Germany, make Germany great again, Germany first. A lot of ties with today. It's just fascinating to see. Those were his slogans. Like, it's not even made up. This is kind of weird because we're living in a time where liberals are kind of telling the truth now, but this is because there's not individuals. They all work for the same cult. So the 1830s, these things all came out. Preterism had already happened. We're going to focus on the past. Preterism, Jesus already returned. Well, what's the point in life? Because it should be over with. The church age should be over, but it's not. Then you have futuristic prophetic dispensationalism. That comes out saying, no, it's way in the future. We got to get the Jews to Israel. Then they'll have this huge revival. They'll find Christ, and then the man of sin, a physical antichrist, will build a temple, sit on a throne, and then God will come. Jews always believe that they can force prophecy. Like that's kind of like a main thing. Is like we can force it. And you talked about Darby, and before we got started recording, we talked about his ties to the Crawley family, where Aleister Crowley became, I'm going to be the face of Satan. I'm going to be the Antichrist and force this prophecy that God, will not listen to. You're not going to force God's hand. His prophecy will come to life when it comes to life, as it has throughout all of history. And the other interesting ties in this is that atheism became a thing. Atheists today think that atheists have always been that way. There's no recollection of anyone who believed in nothing or Big Bang theories or any of these stupid things until the 1800s. Darwinism became, oh, you're not from God, you're from a monkey. There is no God. The French Revolution created atheism. The Jesuits had their operatives in France telling people there is no God, there is only you. This is where the Enlightenment age began. Enlightened. You're enlightened that there's no God. Well, but they call the church age the Dark Ages, right?
Yeah, the cult of reason, right? So
reason above God. Like, it's not reasonable to believe that God exists. There is no God. It's only reason and logic that prevail. Very Vulcan, right? Like very Star Trek Vulcan-esque. So you have all these things that happen in the 1800s: atheism, futurism, looking at the past. No one's reading the Bible. Back then you kind of were. And then you go right into the period before that, after that, into the early 1900s, the Schofield Bible. I think everybody's covered this plenty. But the Schofield Bible continues to contort words. They're not the first ones to do it. The Catholic Church put in the Antichrist, not Antichrist, the Antichrist. That little tiny changes in scripture make a difference. And Schofield's been a master at one word here, one word there. Schofield by himself was a wretch. I mean, the guy was, left his family. He was claimed to be saved by Jesus, left his family. He was convicted of fraud, stealing money from everyone. But this guy is, he's the best interpreter of the Bible. And then you have this event that happens in 1929 where Mussolini signs over sovereign land to the Vatican. Right? So you guys have followed me so far? Yeah. Protestant Reformations, we're still living in the Counter-Reformation exists today. The Catholic Church had power, lost power, wants it back. And they know that they're not going to get that through scripture. And, the Catholics are probably always going to be Catholics. The interesting thing that you're going to see right now is that everybody's going to push you towards orthodoxy, which will bend a knee to Catholicism in the next 5 years. For sure. They'll just rejoin the church. That's going to happen. But then you have this creation of the Vatican. If you guys haven't done Vatican, look, Google Vatican serpent room. It's a vision. Pope sits in front of the Antichrist in this serpent room. It's just fascinating to see. There's telescope is Lucifer 1. There's so many satanic symbols. I'm going to Italy next year. And my wife's like, you want to go to the Vatican? I'm like, absolutely not. By the way,
my wife and I went a few months ago. You should definitely check it out. I mean, as much as intellectually, I knew that I was walking into something crazy, but until you actually check it out,
gotta see it.
Yeah. And again, there is definitely evidence of, I always look for the battle lines, because there is a burst of objectively admirable beauty.
It's gorgeous. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I mean, but it shows you that there is a clash between, and I think this has something to do as well with the foundation of the Jesuits, because that occurred around 1534, right?
Yes.
It seems that something really big, like a major reset, happened, like a phoenixing, breaking down to alchemically reconstitute the Renaissance, happened when the Habsburgs went in and sacked Rome, and Rome lost 80% of its population. It was a brutalizing destruction, and I was surprised to see that's known, that period of the sacking of Rome and what came out of it, when Rome was literally reconstructed. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And the leadership that had led in the best part of the early Renaissance, that's known as the endpoint, the trigger between the high Renaissance and the decline into the Enlightenment. And I think that was done as a political operation to destroy this emergence of something really beautiful and good that was being brought online, that resulted in just this explosion in population, longevity, demographics, training of orphans and the classics. Just heightened aesthetical sensibilities in science that had to be undone. And a lot of the better Christian humanists were purged at that point. And coming out of that, it seems like it was while the Habsburgs were overseeing that purge, is when you had the Order of Malta reconstituted, right? It was formerly the Knights Hospitaller. Yes. And all of a sudden, 1530, that's when the Order of Malta now sets up its new rebranding. 1534, you have the Jesuits, you got the Anglican Church the same year being set up. And
banking began, formal banking at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Like the weaponization of finance goes to the next level. And a lot of the more pagan, overtly evil pagan material becomes enshrined into the sculptures, into the reconstruction of Rome after the Habsburgs at that point. And then you get this weird, this creepiness that you encounter when you go to Rome today.
Gothic.
It's interesting.
So, and they're the ones in control, right? Because this is Freemasonry, the beauty of building that comes from, sacred elements and building and all those things. The intention was to take it from beauty to darkness back to light. So we're going back in that whole dark to light thing. That's true. That's definitely happening. Golden age will always be a false golden age until Christ returns. Just my personal belief, because we're not ever going to get rid of the evil on earth without God casting it away. But the fascinating thing in the middle of all this, you did a great rundown of that, by the way, Matt. That's really well done. People forget that right before 1900, the Rothschild family was appointed as the guardians of the papal treasure. You don't believe me? Go to Encyclopedia Judaica, the Jewish encyclopedia. Absolutely says in there that the Rothschild family is the guardians of the papal treasure. So right there, you have this lineage to set it up for, like, we're going to blame the Jew. It's all Rothschild, 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 Rothschild all day long. People just talk about Rothschild. Well, Rothschild works for the papacy.
Yeah. Yeah. In the Holy Roman Empire, the Jewish, the Hofjuden, the court bankers, were known as a form, like they were actually categorized as a form of property of the royals. So
that's correct. Yeah.
They were treated just like you would treat a chair or a castle that you could sell. So too were the weapons that were the court Jews and their localized mercenary dynasties that were granted to certain very effective Jewish families like the Sassoons or the Montefiores or later on the Rothschilds. They were literally recognized legally as a form of property to be used or discarded if the townsfolk with their pitchforks got too angry and pissed and wanted something to fight, to kill. they would then be like thrown to the mob.
Yeah, over and over again throughout history,
Yeah.
the Jews are set up in positions of prominence, and then they're like, well, it wasn't us, it was those guys. Go kill them.
Yeah.
No, not that they're innocent, because they take tremendous positions of, I mean, you can't deny the Jewish influence on the world right now in positions of power, but how did they get those seats?
Well, yeah,
That's
and
the
I think
question.
that what you find is that with the victims of the anti-Jewish pogroms and like at the various inquisitions, I saw this a lot in Prague. There were so many like purges of Jews where townsfolk would be like would suffer a lot through the ambitions and abuses of a higher oligarchical machination. They would finally have enough of it. They wanted something to destroy, and enough. Their rage was channeled towards these different ghettos, the Jewish ghettos, which they would then, in one case, one whole town was 3,000 people were killed over the course of one night in 1383 in Prague. And there's so many examples of that in different parts of Europe over the time, that many of those Jews who were like tortured and massacred were themselves just like regular people. They weren't part of, they were happily sacrificed by the higher Kabbalistic, later on Sabbatean Satanists who were like laughing and more than happy to have their own people slaughtered, because they were never their own people. They're just disposable, or the Jesuits, right? The same thing that we see so many cases of Jesuits getting like tortured over the centuries. So many Jesuits are getting like skinned alive. And some of them a lot of Jesuits are, I think they're good people who are just reading the Bible. They're not initiated into the big joke. And so they're happily just, sacrificed for the sake of a higher geopolitical ambition. They don't know what their upper elites are trying to do and laughing at them for. Like the Pope Francis, right? Bergoglio, when he was working with the fascist right-wing junta in Argentina, he was helping them oversee the tracking down, torture, and murder of his lower level Jesuit like liberation theologians in the 1970s Argentina. So they're both Jesuits, but the low level guys are totally disposable.
Yeah, they get whacked and they just distract from the guys who actually did the crime. Like, this is like repetitive Luciferianism over and over again. You're totally right. Mm-hmm. So you advance forward. Let's look at where we go from here, right? So Rothschilds are appointed to the guardians of the papal treasure. That's verifiable. There's multiple books on this. So the Rothschilds work for the papacy. That's in Judea, Encyclopedia Judaica. Then you have this movement, now that you've gone from, technically light to dark, right? Light was the monarch and rule, and everyone believed in God because they had to during the reign of the monarchy. And then you have the two-party system, the liberation and freedom. We're all free. We can vote no election's been free since the French Revolution, by the way. Like, I don't buy that in any nation in the world. Since then, because it was a greater way to control it. Again, it's cattle and ranchers. So the ranchers know how to push you in one direction or the other to get you to vote for someone. It's all psychological operations. So you have this test run, and there's a bunch of guys that have good videos about this. So I don't spend time making videos, but a good idea to think about is that whole purpose of the Jesuits being in South America was a test run for communism. Hey, there is no God. We're your God. Serve us, work all day. We'll give you a little bit of food at the end of the day so you have enough energy to work tomorrow, but we're going to send all this money back to the papacy and not to these nations. That's what got them kicked out of South America by the Portuguese and the Spanish. So then you have this idea coming in of enlightenment, selfishness. It's all about me, atheism, no belief in anything. The people who believed in God were sent in 10 different directions. Oh, it's additional testaments with Mormonism. It's future prophetic, dispensationalism. It's the past that already happened. So this big interwoven web that has been cast upon Christianity, which I call myself a believer. I don't even call myself a Christian anymore. I think a word is ludicrous. Nobody knows what a Christian is anymore. What denomination are you? What belief structure? I read the Bible and I pray to Christ every day. That's all I do. And then you have the real darkness approaches. You have World War I, World War II. During World War I, the Russians pull out of the war, and because there was a communist revolution happening, you can tie back Marx directly. I mean, Marx went to a Jesuit school. Mao went to a Jesuit school in China. The Jesuits were heavy in China, heavy in Russia. Plenty of evidence to back that up. And they selected guys who were Jews. They put them in front. They taught them everything they know. This Bolshevik revolution in Russia, distracted them from World War I. The end result was nobody could actually come to the rescue of the Russian people because they were already fighting a war on one front. So the communists took over on the back end in their own town, and that bled into World War II. You follow me so far?
When just that curiosity, so the Jesuit school in China, is that Beijing University, or is that something else that you're talking about?
Oh gosh, the name of it. I'm not as detailed as you. Yeah, okay. I can look at it. I'll send it to you on an email. Right. I'll look for it this weekend. Yeah, there's a whole book written about the Jesuit influence in communist China, and a biography written about Mao at the time. Okay. We talked about the Jesuit school that he went to. Listen to that. I'll have to dig that up.
Thanks. Hey, so real quick, because I have some information to share as well. Before we get there, let's hit a few ads because we're
pay the bills, guys. Go ahead.
Yeah, past the halfway mark. Let's start with Conscious Strength. Maha yourself with supplements that don't suck from Conscious Strength. Founded by Badlands' very own Jordan Sather in 2019, Conscious Strength products are made in America and won't break your bank, unlike other online brands. Their lineup includes collagen for strengthening joints and hair, electrolytes to get rid of those cramps, greens powder that tastes good and mixes easy. I'm going to screw up this word, but shilajit gummies, methylene blue, zeolite, and more. Flip the finger to pharma, be your own doctor, and get supplements that you can trust from Conscious Strength. Go to badlandsmedia.tv/strength to shop now. One more time, badlandsmedia.tv/strength. Link will be in the description below this video. And then the other sponsor is Tamarack Gardens. Or Tamarack Garden, rather, excuse me. Introducing Tamarack Garden's handcrafted herbal remedies, teas, and skincare made with weeds, wildflowers, and wild harvested herbs in the Pacific Northwest. Their products will heal your skin, boost collagen, lighten dark spots, and slow aging. Plus, it is safe for babies, grandmas, and everyone in between. From salves to for headaches, bug bites, and arthritis to supplements for liver and kidney health, they harness God's bounty for your health and to keep you out of the doctor's office. Family owned in North Idaho, Tamarack Gardens. Dermatologist recommended products support your body inside and out because your health deserves better. Visit tamarackgarden.com today with promo code Badlands. You will get $10 off your order. That's tamarackgarden.com, promo code Badlands. And so, and thank you to them. I got to meet them in Deadwood, and they are great people, extremely knowledgeable and very, very, very based. Had a lot of great insight and knowledge to share. We had some great discussions with them, and I know Matt did as well. I think I mentioned this to you the other day, Eric, when we spoke on the phone, but I was just digging through my notes while y'all were talking. I was trying to find this dig that I did from, I think it was 2022 or 2023 of this French politician. This is when I think it must have been 2023. When I was in a Signal chat with a bunch of really, really good researchers. Many of them have black-pilled and kind of like left this like information battle space. This is before I was like podcasting or doing anything public. But they all started they were all going really hard. They were stuck in this dialectic, and you were talking about dialectics last week with G Money, Eric. But they were stuck in this dialectic about like the Islamification of the West, right? And like how Islam was the enemy, and we have to focus on that. And and these are people who are like 10 years younger than me, so they're like in their mid-20s, and they're freaking out that their kids are all going to be Muslim and all that stuff. And so they start sending me these, and this is when I'm like looking into I'm starting to look into Islam, and I'm realizing that there are these Arab partners that Donald Trump has who seem to actually be trying to rid the radicalized elements of it out of the Middle East. And they're like, oh no, we can't trust any Muslim. All of them are evil, that kind of stuff. And so they start sending me these articles of these churches that are being dismantled in France. Like, look at this church, look at this church, look at this church. And I start looking into the people, like the politicians who are responsible for it, the guys who are actually like passing the legislation to get these churches dismantled. And they're all like North African. They're from like Tunisia. They're from Algeria. And then I learned that not only did these guys grow up it was like consistent. It was like 3 of them I found. Not only did they grow up in Jesuit families, as they grew up as Jesuits, at like in their late 20s, they were sent to Cairo, Egypt to learn Arabic. And then they returned to France. They were all born in France, of course, returned to France in like the early 30s as politicians. One of them worked for the French Rothschild Bank, was like a right-hand man, I believe, of David Rothschild. And suddenly they're Muslim, and, you know, they look the part. They're advocating for Islam. Like you have the whole like flood of the migrants from Syria and the Middle East. Syria, of course, was a French protectorate after World War I. And these are the guys who are like dismantling the churches. And I was telling these researchers that I was working with, I was like, these guys are actually all Jesuit. They're not like Muslim. So when you went on G Money Show and started talking about that, I was like, this is spot on. Now, so I was trying to figure out exactly what their names are, and that's not really as significant. But I did find one, like this is the one that keeps coming up. Algerian descent, Jesuit, French politician, and you know who that is? Emmanuel Macron, and yes. worked for the Rothschild Bank. Emmanuel Macron is a Jesuit. He was raised in a Jesuit family. He worked for the Rothschild Bank before becoming a politician, and he's from Algeria.
Yeah. And he's a Zionist, right? Like
is he really? Yeah, I didn't know that. He's from Algeria?
His family is Algerian, yes. And Algeria and Tunisia, for those who don't know, were like French colonies. So there's a lot of politicians in France who are of Algerian descent, born in France, born and raised in France, but they're Algerian and Tunisian. And if you ask like ChatGPT to compile a list of all the Algerian or Tunisian politicians, it'll give you a very long list of Algerian from like the past century, like a very long list, way before the Syrian civil war. So like that was just a profound revelation. And then when I mentioned to you the other day, Eric, that they go to Cairo to like be educated about Islam at the age of 28, like Cairo, of course, is a key part of all this because of the occult mystery schools, right?
Yeah. I'll also say something. Yeah, it's like I want to hear what you have to say, but also it's inspiring also me to add things too. I'll just add. No. Let's throw it at you, Eric, first, and then I'll chime in on this North Africa, Egypt aspect as well.
Yeah, I mean, like the one person I hear, I don't really follow a whole lot of people. I don't watch a whole lot of videos. I try to read books and put things together on my own, and then I listen to people who have good ideas. Like even if I don't agree with them, good ideas. You know, I think Burning Bright talks about the dialectic quite a bit. I kind of like his content. I think he's a very smart guy. The dialectic is the system. So that is what was created after the French Revolution, was the ability to control dialectic. You know, in the early days of online poker, before they had like tracking of your IP address, you would be playing poker online with 10 people at a table, and it was just you and one other person. The other person at that table had 9 screens up. They knew every hand on the board except yours. That's why people lost so much money in online poker in the beginning. That's how the world works. That's how it works. They're Jesuit, Freemason, Muslim, doesn't matter. Like Matt and I were talking about how the Shriners, Albert Pike said, the Shriners, who are all, you must be a 33rd degree Mason to become a Shriner. And their book of worship is the Quran. So this is all intertwined.
Yeah. And also just to get across the similarity of technique of what I think some have called religious engineering. People use the term social engineering a lot, but there's something else called religious engineering, which is the specialty of this occult inner echelon of the oligarchy, is that within the Quran, you have also a tradition that's Kabbalistic. It's called the Bahatini movement.
That's correct,
which professes to have the secret oral teachings of Muhammad, that he had the public teaching that he passed down written wise, and then he passed down orally the secret teachings to his preferred initiated followers that would then be passed down, just as the same story goes for the Kabbalistic mythology around the secret oral teachings of Moses and the secret Torah in that sense, because you have to be initiated to understand. The simple person using common sense and morality would be confused and disgusted and, repulsed by the types of truths that could only be understood by an initiated one. And the same thing in the Gnostic tradition within the Christian world as well. You have the secret teachings of Jesus that are,
Yes.
It becomes a game of telephone. But all that to say, it's like there are these two separate order teaching structures that are used as sort of the lattice work to pass on this type of evil generation to generation, which also can be modified every now and again as well, because it's, again, you can't be held accountable at the end of the day by what you're saying is being right or wrong. But the thing about Algeria as well, and the Egyptian connection that had caught my eye, is that I've noticed that there's something within the Coptic church which also has red alarms in my head, and I'm just beginning to do this research, but a lot of the foundations of what becomes later on the Pietist movement, the Mormon revival, the even the earlier Hussites, the
charismatic revival as well.
Yeah, they find their roots in something known as the Desert Fathers. So even before the, you guys heard of the Desert Fathers?
I don't know much about it, but I have heard it. Yeah.
It's a strange movement, and I have to look more into it. But it's basically a bunch of desert monks and nuns before even the Council of Nicaea. Like, we're talking here maybe 250 or so, during the period where the Gnostics are really spreading. These Desert Fathers emerge, who are kind of ascetic, but I get the sense that it's just a public image, kind of like what you were saying with the Breaking Bad thing. I get that sense that there's this image from the powerful ascetic monks that they're really, they have nothing, they're living in caves, but they wield a lot of power, and I don't think that they're living in minimalism, that the way that they project to many of their followers. And this movement ends up forming the foundation of what becomes both the movement at Mount Athos that organizes the entire Eastern Orthodox Church. So Mount Athos is a control center for the entire Eastern Orthodox Church, still is today. And at the same time, it creates the foundation of the Benedictine order that becomes foundational in basically the Cistercians. So the Benedictines that's the order that creates the Knights Hospitaller. It's Bernard of Sasso who establishes a high-level Benedictine, who establishes the order of the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem to oversee the Crusades. But then it's another radical Benedictine, or a few Benedictines, who go on to create the Cistercians, which sets up the Knights Templar, and that's Bernard de Clairvaux and company. And Hugh de Payenne is another one, but they're all Cistercians that are essentially following the rule of Benedict, which follows the Desert Fathers. And it all emerges out of Egypt. It's tied very, very closely. This is the foundation of sort of the Coptic church, which, again, there's tons of, again, I hate having to do these disclaimers, but we have to. There's so many super good, moral, loving, wonderful Coptic Christians, just as there are so many good, wonderful, loving Catholics and Protestants of various denominations. But at the same time, there's this other thing that also seems to be there. And the fact that, again, it's so foundational, and it's so little work that's at least critical has been done on this, that it's piquing my curiosity. And it's only something I'm beginning to scratch on the surface, but I feel like there's a lot more to it. And it probably interfaces with the early, there were so many denominations that were spreading even in the 2nd, 3rd century, so many different flavors of Christianity with the Gnostics. You had the Valentinians, you had the followers of Basilides, you had the followers of Mani, the Manichaeans, you had the Pelagians, you had the, what do you call them? The Donatists that Augustine was fighting. But it was like splintering even then, using a lot of the same metaphysics that were then justifying a lot of the splintering up of it 1,000 years later. It's just that I think back then you had some more competent people like St. Ambrose and Augustine, who were much more competent at putting together battles to try to keep the entire edifice of Christianity from crumbling early on, which we didn't have those qualities of people 1,000 years later.
But did they do that? That's the question, right? Were they trying to keep it together, or were they slowly parsing it out over time?
No, I think they wanted to break it right there in the spot. I think that you had just some, I've read a lot of Augustine and his fights with the Manichaeans and his fights with the Donatists and the Perfectionists. I think he was doing a pretty valiant job.
Are fascinating dig.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
Fascinating.
they're still there today. I mean, that's the Templars.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, you go for
No,
it.
you're dead on. Yeah. So like you can parse all these things out because everything is a kind of like it's a little tiny inch. The devil is so smart. Like he is so much smarter than all of us that, like the Agent Smith analogy, right? It doesn't matter who is in the Matrix, Agent Smith can overwhelm them, become Agent Smith. These people have, again, all good people. There's a lot of good people. The Bible tells you we're all inherently sinful and evil. That's our hearts. Our hearts are inherently, I used to be in this thought of like, oh, everyone's good and like trust your heart. That's not biblical at all. But we've learned that through the 1800s and through the esoteric teachings and New Age stuff, which all came in the 1800s. Atheism. Atheism is a religion. It's a religion of nihilism. It believes in nothing. Right. So all these things, you said such a elegant word. Religious engineering is actually a better term than social engineering because everyone has a religion. Woke is a religion. Climate change is a religion. These belief structures that become people, these are different dialectics that they can use like players on or pieces on a chessboard anytime they want to move the cattle in any direction that they want. That is an ending today. Some people believe that the devil controls a dialectic. I believe that. Some people believe God controls the dialectic. I also believe that because all these bad things produce real believers. They produce really good people. Like even like talk about the Jesuits. All the evil things that they've done, they've also brought a lot of people to Jesus. So God will turn anything around. But people believing that a group of men are controlling a global dialectic is a little out of my reach. I just don't know that would be the case. I think they're all led by this esoteric leader, this angel of light that guides them all. It's my personal belief. So yeah, the Algerian digs are very interesting. I've done a couple of them, and they kind of expose it through film, which, by the way, was created by the Jesuits. Like Hollywood is inherently Jesuit turned over to the Jews. The Jesuits developed the projection machine, a candle and a thin piece of paper with a picture. A candle would project an image on a wall. The Plato's allegory. Just keep them looking at the wall, never leaving the cave. That can be attributed back to the Jesuits very easily. So this whole thing that we're living through right now is just constant. Yeah, it's a great dig, Matt. Like look through it. It's attributed to a Jesuit. Was he a member of the Society of Jesus directly associated to the papacy? I don't know, but all the writings.
The very idea of having film,
not film. It was a box with a candle that was folded with one side open, and you'd put a piece of paper in it, and the candle would light it up, and it would project the image of that paper on the wall. Think of like if all your power went out. Like those old machines where you'd put your, I don't know if you guys might be too young, but we'd have these things we put on our face with a bunch of pictures in a row, and you'd click on it and go from one picture to another inside of it. That kind of theory, but that even goes back there. It's a very interesting dig. But Hollywood was inherently very Catholic, very Jesuit until about 1915. And then it kind of went to the liberal Jewish state of affairs in Hollywood today. And now it's coming back, right? Mel Gibson's big again. You have Angel Studios and all these everything's Christian. Like Angel Studios is fascinating. I love the movies. Unfortunately, the founder of Angel Studios is Mormon. Who Mormons will tell you they're Christians. They're not Christians. They're Mormons. They're totally like Catholic is also. Why do Catholics say Catholics and Christians? Because they're different. They're not. That's what this whole word Christian became strange. Like it's like I'm a Christian. Well, what denomination are you? That's the first question you get from people. The dialectic changes. The more pieces you have on the board, the more likely you are to win. So create these little dialectics, these little groups of people, which are now totally demonic. The trans is a religion, which is a very demonic religion, altering the creation of God. You have all these things that are happening. Then you get into Bolshevism, you get into all these other things. There's Jesuit ties. There's obviously Jewish ties. That's so overtly Jewish in some of these things. You just look a little bit deeper and who was involved in some of these revolutions.
Sorry, wasn't the Dallas Jenkins' father also the founder of the Left Behind series, the Darbyite?
The pre-tribulation rapture.
Yeah.
So they interweave it.
What you mean? Is that the Leftovers? Is that what the show was, or
Left Behind?
Left Behind.
It was like a book series in the 90s, turned into a ton of movies and shows, and traumatized a lot of people around the world. But but it's entirely based on Darbyism and Darby's rapture theology. That
pre-tribulation.
Think
of what an evil thing this is. Like there will be life is tribulation, and there will be difficulties in life. It says that in the Bible. The Bible actually says life just gets worse until Jesus comes back. There's never a time where you're like, oh, it's so prosperous and safe. That's Second Thessalonians or First Thessalonians that specifically talks about a false golden age before all this stuff happens. But think of the deception. Like, you have all these Christian, quote unquote Christians, rooting for the Jews, for the world to come against the Jews and basically slaughter them, hoping that there's a revival. Because you know what? I'll be pulled up in the clouds. I'm just watching from heaven with my popcorn while everybody gets slaughtered.
Yeah, you don't have to pay for your mortgage anymore.
Yeah.
It's pretty evil.
Yeah, I never really understood. I still can't really wrap my head around like the promotion of a new Messiah and like why helping the Jews bring a Messiah into the earth, like to the earth, is like, I don't know if the thinking is like they're going to bring their Messiah and then that's going to provoke God to send Jesus back for the second coming. I'm not really. It's hard for me to track exactly what they're thinking here, but
well, you see,
it doesn't seem like it aligns with Scripture at all.
No, it would. I mean, you can make a case for it, right? Like, so, like, we don't. Nobody knows. I read through. There's 5 basic, six basic tribulation rapture theories. Whether the rapture occurs the way any of these people say is up for interpretation. But don't you see the point of this? Everyone's talking about the future, and no one's talking about the past. The only people talking about the past in religion, which is a made up word at this point in time, the only past they talk about is preterism, that it already happened. The rapture already happened. Jesus already came. It's all over. Just live your life. Jesus is in you. Devil got cast in the lake of fire. So why do we have all this sin? But they're not talking about the Protestant Reformation, where the Protestants called out the papacy as the beast. They said, this is the beast and it will rise again. That was the purpose of the Protestant Reformation. Indulgences, made the accusation. Look at all the quotes from the reformers about the papacy. Like, just go online and look for quotes from all the reformers, from Calvin, from Luther. No one's been talking about that for 250 years. Nobody, because we've been too busy with the dialectic, left versus right, democracy, liberalism, communism, all this other stuff. These are all just dialectics that distract us from a Christian perspective or believer perspective, from focusing on the things that are important in our life, like prayer and scripture and our families and all that love. And now we've had this 250-year reign where the family's been decimated. It's been very dark. We've had oppressive regimes throughout the world that have just absolutely slaughtered Christians. 160 million Christians were slaughtered in the 20th century. Nobody talks about that. Russia, China. There's a big Catholic church forming. Big Catholic mega churches are forming in New York, in India, in China. These are all coming. Why? Why are they building them? Why are all these mega churches now getting mainstream media play? The whole world's going, oh, revival's coming. We'll be saved by a new government. Like, that has never been the case. A new government will save us and a great revival will occur and everything will be peaceful. That's not what Scripture says at all. It actually says a false revival comes, a false golden age comes, the beast takes control, and the world marvels after the beast. Those are literal words from Revelation. The world will marvel after the beast. So I think we're approaching this era personally. There's a lot of people who do. I'm not like you. This isn't a unique thought. There's a lot of people in the Christian space that are trying to disseminate where we are. It's kind of a favorite pastime of Christians. Where do we align with the Bible? Well, I think we're right in 1 Thessalonians in a false golden age, heading into 2 Thessalonians with the man of sin reigning again, lawlessness. And I think that eventually we're going to have like this really good 8 to 10 year run of prosperity and peace. And I think it's going to be followed by the true beast system where the papacy intertwines all of the religions. Have you guys heard of the, Matt, I'm sure you have, but Gordon, have you heard the term ecumenism?
Yeah, I think I have. Yeah. ECUMISM, right?
Yes.
Ecumenism. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
So when Vatican II occurred, so remember 29, Mussolini gave the land of Vatican to the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church endorsed Hitler. The Catholic Church endorsed Mussolini. Then you have the evil Jewish communist godless bastards that are trying to take over the world. That dialectic happened for a while. While that was happening, Hitler did provide a golden age for Germany, a tremendous economic turnaround, only to be besieged on war in the next front for the dark and the light to constantly fight each other. He opened up the doors for this is the weird thing. Is so many people going, oh, Hitler was right about everything. That's what they want you to see. Like, really think about this. I mean, I've seen Europa probably 4 times now. It's fascinating. But the more I watch it, the more I'm like, you forgot the Jesuits and all this, man. Like, you forgot that the SS soldiers were like trained by Jesuits. You forgot that Jesuits endorsed Hitler. You forgot about Henry Ford. You forgot about all these other. So it's like the dialectic control is constantly on the move. There you go. There's the Havara Agreement where the Nazis and the Jews totally worked together to take over Palestine and eventually grant Israel. Like, I always ask people, World War II is.
Sorry, yeah, go on. I was just going to ask, is that Aaron Russo over there speaking, or?
This is I forget his name, but I found this back in June. This is like an 11-minute clip from a 1984 broadcast. I think it's worth watching the first few minutes of it. This is they're reporting on this author's book that he had just published, and they show like clips of him speaking, and basically what he's about to describe that the term Nazi actually stands for National Socialist Zionism, and that the people who were persecuting Jews and putting them in concentration camps were other Jews who were angry at them for not endorsing Zionism, and that it was basically Jew on Jew crime. That's his assertion, and that there was actually a real discussion about erecting a statue to Hitler in Israel because he's one of the great founding fathers of the modern state of Israel. I think it's worth watching for a few minutes just as information and whether it, it's accurate. And I also am curious what his name is in the book, because I haven't watched this thing in several months. But let me play it for a few minutes and then we can talk about it.
Sure.
Live on Channel 5. This is the 10 o'clock.
Good old graphics.
Deborah Norton.
Yeah.
Coming out revealing secret negotiation between the Nazis and the Zionists in 1933. Which allowed German Jews and their assets to go to Palestine. Rich Samuels joins us tonight with the story of the controversy behind the book and the author's struggle to write it. Rich?
Deborah, with the rise of Adolf Hitler to power in the spring of 1933, the Jews of the world were faced with a dilemma. They could raise a cry of protest, a cry few would heed, or they could make a deal with Hitler, a deal that would bring a step closer their dream of an independent Jewish state. American Jews marched calling for the boycott of all German exports. Jews throughout Europe echoed that call. So did Jews everywhere. But a group of Zionists at the same time was quietly negotiating an agreement with the Nazis to allow the immigration of German Jews and the transfer of their assets to Palestine. That deal, reported in August 1933, was the transfer agreement. Palestine, sparsely settled by Jews at the time, was radically changed as a result.
I lived in Palestine from 1933 to 1936. And we saw every week transports of German Jews coming to settle in Palestine.
German Jewish settlement of Palestine was, for a time, official Nazi policy. These photos of Jewish life in Palestine, along with a lengthy text, appeared in 1934 in the Berlin paper Der Angriff. A Nazi Visits Palestine was the title of the multi-part series. A medal was struck by Goebbels in commemoration. On one side, the swastika. On the other, the Star of David.
Both occult
Hitler
symbols.
demanded one concession for the transfer agreement, that the call for a boycott of the Reich, raised by Jews here and elsewhere, be rejected by the Zionists. The Zionists made that concession. And so, while Nazis were marching in Germany, and while Jews were marching here, diplomacy was running a more important story. In the Mediterranean, where the dream of a nation-state for Jewish people came a step closer to reality.
We'll talk about that wall.
The story in this book some will find hard to accept.
You've never been told what the origin of Nazi is. NA is National Socialism, which was the German Nazis. And in 1923, there was a double agent who came to Hitler, and he said to Hitler, look, your Nazi party is not, your National Socialist Party is not getting off the ground. You need an alliance. And he suggested that they ally with the Zionist Party. So the NA of National Socialism joined with the Zionist Party in the World Zionist Party in 1923, and ever after was known as the Nazis, NAZI. The ZI was for Zionists, but of course no one knew that, because our popular mythology is that the terrible Nazis were attacking the Jews. But what we were never told is there was a great schism in the Jewish community of the world between the Zionists and the non-Zionists. You see, the non-Zionists were the Orthodox Jews who believed you could not have a Jewish state until the Jewish Messiah came. They didn't acknowledge Christ as Messiah, so they were waiting for their own Jewish Messiah to come. Then you would have a Jewish state, and that Jewish state would rule the world. But the Rothschilds in 1828 decided they couldn't wait for the Jewish Messiah, so they started what they called Reform Judaism under Moses Hess. And Reform Judaism said, yes, you can have a Jewish state before the Messiah comes. And the reason you could have it was the Rothschilds had made so much money, they said, we'll buy our own states. So the Rothschilds sent people out to the Middle East to have Jewish settlements, and which is today the state of Israel. Totally created by the Rothschild money.
Who did they work for?
And so Reform Judaism then became the cause of a great schism between Orthodox Jews and Reform Jews. Now, no one has ever told you this, I'm sure, but you think that the Jewish community is monolithic. In fact, it's split sharply down the middle. But even today, they have riots in the Jewish parliament between the Orthodox Jews and the Reform Jews. And they cannot agree on anything because the basic premise is a fundamental disagreement over whether a Jewish state should even exist today. So in Germany in 1923, the German Jews were quite prosperous and quite happy, and they were not interested in becoming Zionists, and they were not interested in going to Palestine. After all, they had beautiful mansions in Germany, they had symphony orchestras, they had art, they had everything, and they were accepted in the community. As Ezra Pound said, Germany was the least anti-Jewish country in Europe. When you went over into Poland and Russia, you had a very strong feeling against Jews. But in Germany, they were accepted and happy, so why would you ever have an anti-Jewish government in Germany?
Yeah,
and of course, Hitler, allying himself with the Zionists, he said, after all, you're right. He said, we have the same goals. And so he allied with the Zionist party, and the mission of the Nazis was to force the anti-Zionist Jews to accept Zionism. And this is what the concentration camps were about. They put the anti-Zionist Jews in the concentration camps, and they were placed under the direct administration of the Sonderkommandos, who were the Zionist Jews. So the concentration camps were run by the Zionist Jews in order to punish and get rid of the anti-Zionist Jews, which they did. And of course, that's a part of the Holocaust that you were never told, that this was a fundamental Jewish disagreement, which the German people, that Daniel Goldhagen wrote a book in which he said all Germans cooperated in their anti-Jewish feeling and the Holocaust, which was not true at all. The Germans did not even know what was going on, most of them. It's just like in the United States, when we were perfecting the atomic bomb and bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the American people knew nothing about it. It was forbidden to mention the atomic bomb. I was serving in the Air Force at that time. We never heard of any atomic mission or atomic bomb until the bomb was dropped on.
Herzl too, right? Theodor Herzl also wrote letters to Cecil Rhodes and many others saying that we can use anti-Semitism. We should use anti-Semitism
as
in
a weapon
order to help as a weapon to help our cause. And he himself wasn't religious in any way. He was a Nietzschean. He followed Nietzsche, and but promoted
in his diary.
Huh?
Herzl's diary is, first of all, Herzl met with the Pope multiple times. That's documented with photos.
Yes.
Herzl's diary said that he had wished that he could become Catholic, and that his goal, that what he wanted to do was convert the Jews to Catholics, which is going to happen.
Did he say that? That's interesting, because his admiration for Cecil Rhodes then makes a lot more sense, because Rhodes also donated so much land of Rhodesia to the Jesuits, more than anybody else. He gave only land to the Catholic Jesuit order. And that was the whole point of his Templar obsession. That's why the Round Table movement took on that name, was the Cecil Rhodes Round Table, the Milner Round Table, because they idolized the Templars and the notion of King Arthur, which was part of the Grailness that recruited people, idiots, to become warrior, idiot, killer, murderers, to die and to be, to kill for the sake of this cause of creating the Kingdom of Jerusalem and reconstructing the Temple of Solomon, which was the Templar obsession. That was their religion. It was recreate the Temple of Solomon, the third temple. And that's where their home base was, right? When they were worshiping Baphomet, was Mount Moriah, the Temple Mount. And the fact that Herzl would admire that makes a lot of sense, that he would admire something within the Catholic Church at the same time as proposing to use anti-Semitism, to use he was
an anti-Semite. There's an article on Medium called "Was Theodore Herzl an Anti-Semite?" Like, everyone should read it. It's fascinating. He was an anti-Semite. He actually hated being Jewish.
Yeah,
he hated it.
That's true. That's true. And the like the guy in that clip mentioned like the Orthodox, like the ultra Orthodox, who their view was they wanted an isolationist community. They wanted to be isolated from the non-Jews, and they thought there should be no interaction. There should be a segregated society, Jewish and non-Jewish. And then you had like the reform Jews that they were talking about. They wanted to integrate into European society, and they thought they're like, we should be putting our people on the school board so that the schools will start teaching about Judaism and teaching our ideas, and we should start dressing like them so that they'll accept us, and that's how we get rid of anti-Semitism. But
who does that sound like though, Gordon? From the very beginning of this video, that they will be painters and educators.
Yeah, like infiltration, not invasion, right? Yeah. But the ultra Orthodox looked at Herzl and they were like, well, we can't trust this guy because he's not really one of us. He's really more European than he is Jew. And to your point, Herzl would go around to the Prussian bankers who viewed the Jews as a problem, like because the Jews were dissidents, like political dissidents. And he said, well, here's how you get rid of your problem. Here's how you get rid of the problem. Let's send them all to the Middle East, and then you won't have to deal with them anymore. And they were like, well, that's a great idea. We definitely will sign up for that. Yeah. So that's like how the whole thing gets pieced together. And the Rothschilds are just like what that guy was saying about the sophisticants in Germany. They were like, well, we have no interest in going to Palestine. Like, we're not going to go live in the wilderness with any of y'all. We love it here in London. But Herzl was told them, he said, well, what happens when all these Eastern European animals, because that's what he referred to them as, come to London and start fomenting anti-Semitism? They're going to throw all of you out. They're going to kick all of y'all out, like just like they have 109 times.
Yeah.
So
cattle and ranchers.
Yeah. So there you go. It's like that. Like, this is within the Jewish community, and man,
what does Rothschild mean in German?
Red shield.
Who used red shields?
Knights of Malta. And
who were the Prussian bankers?
And who flies the Knights of Malta flag from the back of their yachts, as Matt has shown us? The Rothschilds. Like, you can go look at the pictures of their yachts, and they're flying the Knights of Malta flag off the side of their...
The Solar Cross. Who else used the Solar Cross?
Oh, that's the Templars.
The Templars, but even further back than that, those who worship Nimrod. Nimrod had a bastard son named Tammuz. Tammuz was verifiably born on December 25th. The Vatican has a celebration called the Celebration of the Immaculate Conception, which is on December 8th, 9 months and 3 days after that is 9/11.
You mentioned the Prussian bankers. Finish that thought. Who are the Prussian bankers?
Knights of Malta. They're the ones who actually created modern day banking.
Yeah. Königsberg, right? That's where the Templars were founded, right? Well, or the Knights of Malta, the Templars, all that. Like the Crusades were founded in Königsberg.
Yeah, that's the Knights Templar.
Yeah, which is
the Amalfi, right? So the actual the Maltese cross, which was immediately that. So the Knights Hospitaller cross originally, that emblem comes from Amalfi, which was an early city state where many of the leading Roman patricians migrated to, along with Venice. And Genoa, Venice, and Amalfi were partly rivals, but organized in harmony of general intention of how the world should be organized in general. Though they would like fight over which one of them was going to get to be which part was going to be the conduit of power projection as the prima inter pares. And Amalfi was the dominant. That's known even in economics textbooks as the originator of mercantile capitalism when it was set up in 800. And it was the owner of the Isle of Capri, which was donated to the Benedictines the moment the Benedictine order was created out of the Desert Fathers by Saint Benedict in Scholastica, his weird twin sister founder of the Sacred Nuns, the Sacred Virgins, in like 530. Both of them had immediately the leading Roman patrician. I forgot the name.
Wait, I'm going to pause you. You said Sacred Virgins in 530 because I don't know much about the Desert Fathers. You said Sacred Virgins 530. When was Islam created? Were there virgins in heaven?
That was later. That was like
100 years later.
But this was there was already nuns like that vowed chastity earlier on. A lot of them, though, seem to come out of the Desert Fathers. Again, the Desert Fathers and Sisters. That's a strange thing. But the fact that it was like the modern version of the nuns was set up as Benedict's twin sister Scholastica as the founder of this thing that worked together. The Order of St. Clare's, there was a Franciscan movement as well that also followed the exact same thing that maintained a continuity. seemed to be a big part of it that seeded the Knights of Malta in Amalfi, right? Which then you see its sister agencies that act like rivals from the bottom. So people think, oh yeah, the Templars are rivals to the Knights of Malta.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, no, maybe from the bottom up, but from the top down, they're one.
They hated each other, sure.
Yeah, no.
It's like the guys in DC, they hate each other on the Congress floor, but they share an apartment in DC when they're there.
No,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, right.
I was thinking too, like Trotsky, right? Like Trotsky's known as a radical Bolshevik leftist. That's what he's known for. But at the same time, he's working with Jabotinsky. He's getting his recruits from the Bolsheviks to go and like become, who are like, because I mean, the Bolsheviks, he was working with Jabotinsky in 1905 and what's his name? Alexander Helfand, Parvis, the arms dealer and financier who finances the young Ottomans, the Balkan Wars. That guy, who's part of the Jacob, like the Max Warburg Schiff network that's funding the Federal Reserve in America, that's setting that thing up, is also behind, on the one hand, the young Ottomans, behind Parvis. Trotsky is being pushed to be like the top dog who's going to come out as sort of the leader of the Bolshevik New Russia. You have Jabotinsky. All three of them are together out of Ukraine. That goes on to become the Nazi of the official like hardcore Nazi killer of the new Israel, and Trotsky is working with a bunch of Nazis. Like leading up to World War II, Trotsky's fifth columnists in Russia are collaborating with the fascist Japanese, with the Vichy France fifth columnists in France, with the Germans, with the French, with the Nazis in England. Yeah. So you got this convergence of. Like, what are the Nazis? What's Goebbels? Well, Goebbels. I mean, sorry. What's Himmler and what's his name? Eichmann. Eichmann is studying Kabbalah. He's studying
very occultic.
Yeah, so that they could set up Himmler. They're both New Templars. They're running the New Templar Order in the SS with the Vril Society, so that they could establish this state that Napoleon was trying to establish in Israel to force some end times prophecy. That involves getting the Jews to become convinced that they have to go and like murder themselves.
Have to be there. Yes.
Yeah. It's like
sacrificial lambs.
Solomon's temple can be rebuilt. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they pledged fealty to Caesar at the days of Christ. Right before the crucifixion, they pledged fealty to Satan. The home of Satan was the Roman Empire. You know, it all ties together because you also have Nazis, verifiably war criminals that somehow were acquitted in the Nuremberg trials, that went to America and taught us intelligence, that went to, like, people don't really do deep research on the Mossad. Half of the consultants of the Mossad were SS agents from Germany.
Yes.
So these people who hated Germany so much, they created the Mossad.
Otto Scorsese.
Yes. Yeah. Otto Scorsese, the most famous of them all. But then you also have
Hitler's personal bodyguard goes to work for Mossad to hunt down.
Yeah, Nazi, but they hate each other.
Yeah, to go hunt down Nazi scientists who were working with the Egyptians and the Soviets, right? Yeah,
all these same things over and over. Egyptians. What happened after the Bolshevik Revolution? Then Orthodoxy grew. You know, Christian Orthodox. I got invited to go to Russia, to Moscow, to speak at an anti-Zionist conference. I'm the only non-pastor they invited, and I may or may not go, but. They have this huge, the Orthodox hates the Jews, the Catholics hate the Jews, but the Christians now, the Protestants, they're the Jew lovers. They're like gay, you know, like that's the thing, is like, you guys sound gay. That's what you hear on Twitter. So what is happening right now, guys? What is happening? In my opinion, it's the destruction of Protestantism, the revival of Catholicism, blended together with Orthodoxy. Ecumenism is the goal. The Vatican II talked about ecumenism. We need to harness in all of these renegade belief structures out there. It's Vatican II. It's a big part of it. Now you have the Pope who has ecumenical meetings he's meeting with Muslims once a month. The Pope, doesn't matter, like, remove the person of the Pope, right? It doesn't matter Pope Leo, Pope Pius. It's the crown. It's the crown that they wear. They are trying to bring these together. Islam is so similar. Islam praises Mary and says Jesus was a prophet and that Jesus will return with the Mahdi to destroy the Antichrist, the Jewish Messiah. So you see how these like prophecies, these are all Jewish prophecies, by the way, that what's happening right now is a forced false Armageddon. The Jews are in their land. The prophecy is fulfilled. Now we're talking about the third temple. I was in the Red Heifer meeting in Addison, Texas. I was in it.
I want to hear about that more.
What?
Man.
You were in the meeting? What do you mean you were in the meeting? How's that work?
So I started, this guy Brian, I get referred to him. So before Bitcoin, I was a big gold guy, just buying gold. Every check I had, every time I made money, I was buying gold. So I started meeting all the gold people when I moved to Texas from LA. When I got here, I was paying a premium, and I don't like doing that, especially if I'm coming in, putting an entire paycheck into gold. I want a good deal. And the general gold places weren't. So a buddy of mine goes, hey, my buddy is a jeweler and he buys gold. He actually makes the jewelry. He's not a reseller. So he's like, maybe he'll sell you gold. So I got his number. I called him. We became really good friends. Our first conversation was 4 hours just talking about Jesus, and like just an incredible guy. He's definitely a Christian Zionist, because there were pictures of him with the IDF in his office. And like back then I really didn't know. This is years ago. So I didn't really know much about because it didn't boil to the forefront. I didn't really care about dispensational. I didn't really care what anybody else said until it started coming in my face every day. Right. Because people are like, I'm like, that's not Israel. What are you guys talking about? That's not the Israel of the Bible. And I live in Dallas, which is, by the way, this is where dispensationalism launched. So everyone around me is a dispensationalist. That is the common teaching here. I go to a church that doesn't teach that. And I'm a non-denominational Christian. I do not believe in denominations. So I'm buying gold from him, and we're talking about all this stuff. And I brought up, I was like, this is 3 years ago when the red heifers were born. I go into his office to buy gold, and I'm like, hey, Brian, do you see this article? The red heifers were born, like this old red heifer prophecy that, by the way, the red heifer prophecy in the Bible was just a way of the sacrificers to cleanse themselves. You have to sacrifice red heifer, bathe in this water mixed with some wood that would cleanse you if you touched a dead body. That's really it. Like, it's all you have from the Old Testament. And I asked him about it, and he goes, yeah, do you know where they were born? I said, no. And he goes, on my ranch. I go, are you kidding me? You birthed the red heifers? He goes, oh yeah, we birthed like 200 cattle. There's about 50 pure red heifers. So he's like, check this out. He opens up an album, pictures of all the cattle. And I'm like, who's that guy over there? He's like, oh, that's the FBI. The FBI went to this guy's house and lived in his prophet quarters, his prophet chamber, for almost 2 years while rabbis from Israel came and inspected the cattle. It can only have 5 non-red hairs. I didn't even know that. 5 non-red hairs. Doesn't say that in any Christianity, by the way. That's Judaism. Yep. So dispensationalism is Judaized Christianity, not Christianized Judaism, which is what everybody talks about. And then I was like, this is fascinating, man. So I went there and saw the whole thing. And a few months later, I get a phone call, and he's like, there's this meeting I got to have you come to. And I go, what? What is it? And he's like, just come. I just want you to come. You're going to love it. So I go, okay. And the address is to a kosher restaurant. And I'm like, this is weird. Like, where? I didn't even know there's a kosher restaurant in that part of Dallas. I had no idea. So I show up there, and I walk into this room filled with mega church pastors, filled with them. I won't name names because that time will come. And I don't think I need to name their names. You probably know who they are. Some of these guys, pulling up in Rolls Royces, beautiful cars, and just like, where's the vow of poverty, right? Just like the vow of poverty for Catholic priests that all drive Mercedes at the Catholic high school I went to. We have a vow of poverty, but you have a Mercedes 500 series. I've seen this hypocrisy my whole life. So I walk in there, and it's basically a sales pitch. And here's what they pitched. This was the part that got me. So there's 3 rabbis from Tel Aviv, nice enough guys, right? Like, nice enough guys. Sat down, talked to me for a little bit. I'm like, man, I really just don't believe in any of this stuff. I'll hear what you have to say. The pitch was, you can be part of prophecy. We need $100 million to rebuild this 3rd temple. I go, where does it say 3rd temple in the Bible? And these pastors are just lapping it up like lapdogs. And, they wanted to raise $100 million. And during this process, they said, we can make this happen. And I'm like, prophecy does not work like that. Prophecy, you can't make prophecy happen. You cannot force prophecy. It's God's will. And so I ended up getting just angry and walked out. And one of the rabbis came up to me before I left, and I was like, "Listen, I'm no goyim, man. Like, I know what's going on here. This isn't for me. I don't know how any of these guys go on a pulpit on Sunday and preach that Jesus came, yet you're here trying to hail another Messiah. Like, this does not make sense to me." That's what got me into dispensationalism and understanding it, because I didn't care about it until that meeting. So yeah, I was there. I know the guy who birthed it. He's a phenomenal human being. He's absolutely going to heaven, but he's completely confused. And he hates that I even talk about this stuff with him anymore. Now that I can verifiably show him the research of John Darby and where this came from and who Schofield was, they still don't believe it. We're never going to save them, because what's going to happen is they're going to create a false prophecy. Look at all the things that have been built in place. You have, Blue Beam, all these, conspiracy theories that are actually declassified documents. But you have all the technology available today to do it. Look what just happened the other day, guys. A meteor almost hit a city in Mexico. Did you see that? Dude, listen to this whole thing. This is so.
Did you see the video?
I saw the video.
That was like ridiculous. Like what?
It just changed direction. It happened to do it on a holy day of a holy Catholic day.
Guys, obviously our alien god saved us.
What was that? What was that? That
false signs and wonders will be everywhere, guys. This is the time of the false golden age, false signs and wonders. You have all the tools of it. Earthquakes, volcanoes, these are all man-made. Climate change, all man-made.
I just want to say just quickly, because I do have my ride that's leaving, unfortunately. So I'm personally gonna have to go. You guys can keep going. Thank you. This has been a really interesting ride, and there's things I want to say, but I just
we'll do it again. Yeah, you guys have me back on?
We'll definitely have to have you back, Eric. But Matt,
we'll hang out for a few minutes though.
Yeah, we'll hang out for a few minutes if you have to bail.
Yeah,
see you, Matt. God bless you, man. Great meeting you.
See you, likewise.
Yeah, but real quick, I don't know if you've seen this, Eric. But sorry, I remember you, Matt. There you go. I don't know if these are the people who hosted that dinner. You don't really have to disclose anything, but the Temple Institute. So these are the guys who hosted the dinner, and I stumbled onto this like a year or two ago, and I went and looked in their. If you go look in their frequently asked questions, I thought this was really strange. It says, "Where is the Ark of the Covenant located?" And they go on to explain, while some have claimed to have evidence that the Ark is in Ethiopia, of course, moviegoers are treated to a fanciful version of the story in Raiders of the Lost Ark. In reality, the expression Lost Ark is not an accurate description for the Jewish people's point of view, because we have always known exactly where it's located. The Ark is hidden quite well, but it's not lost. Like they claim to have the Ark of the Covenant, right? I mean, it's
false prophecy.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty strange, man. And then you look at what's happening over there in Israel right now. Like they're basically posturing like they're going to destroy the Dome of the Rock and rebuild this thing.
They're not going to. That's going to. I believe either that's going to happen. I believe either they're going to destroy the Dome of the Rock. By the Weeping Wall, by the way, a Jewish Israeli did an archaeological dig. That wall is neither. It is neither part of the temple, nor is it part of a Roman building left over. That is the wall that protected the temple. So everyone's lying about that. And that's archaeologically proven with 3D rendering. So everyone's lying everywhere. There's false prophets, false signs and wonders. The comet happened to happen on a holy day in the Catholic Church. October 7th is another Catholic holy day. All this stuff kind of intertwines. And here's what kind of kicked it in full gear for me is when Charlie Kirk died. Yeah. And this is probably going to anger people. But my personal opinion, having studied history enough and understanding the occult and understanding technology that exists today and the technology that is not released to the general public, is I don't believe anybody of any massive following and real prominence out there is not a construct of this massive multi-conglomerate organization. Not a single one of them. They are all going to, nobody gets to these positions with 30 million followers, presidents of countries, even senators, congressmen, even local politicians. These are constructs. And I remember I was in a consulting meeting at an oil and gas company in Dallas. And in the meeting, we were talking about World War II. We were done with what we were doing. So everybody always asked me questions, which World War II, it's all a lie. Nobody knows the truth. Were they Zionists in the camp? Were they communists in the camp? Were there really camps? Were they building weapons? Why would you kill people who are building weapons? All these things are up for interpretation. So we're talking about them. And somebody goes, Charlie Kirk just got shot. And I was like, we're going to war with Iran. This is the first thing I said. Yeah. We're going to war with Iran. And they're like, why? So I explained it. So here you have Charlie Kirk, who, God bless his soul, he has brought so many young people to religion. Has he brought them to faith? That will be determined. Religion and faith are very different things. But, God bless his soul, construct or not, whatever you want to believe. But here's a guy who professed Israel, God's chosen people, which is a complete, I just proved that to you early on with, Judah, the father of the Jews, sold his brother for silver and then ended up bending a knee to him after his kids died. So clearly not the chosen people. Chosen people are those who follow Christ, regardless of their race.
Agreed.
And we're not chosen, we're elected. Like, it's a totally different. God didn't say, I'm going to choose Eric to be my chosen person. God called me. I answered the call. I try to be obedient and be a good disciple, a disciplined follower of a master. and I fail all the time, and I ask and I repent. That is the key to Christianity, is repentance. There is no physical anything. It is repentance of sin. That's how you get forgiven. And so Charlie Kirk dies. I hear that and I'm like, well, he's so pro-Israel, but the last few months he had been talking about it. Here, I'm going to break some threads for you here. So some of this stuff, like I stopped paying attention to Charlie Kirk 9 months before. Like I was just like, listen, okay, this guy, everyone thinks obviously he's a Jewish Israeli shill, which you have every reason in the world to believe that. But then the story changes. Why? And everyone's saying, oh, you know, Trump controls this. This was predetermined hundreds of years ago, guys. Like, look at the Illuminati cards. Like, it's so, even Trump is in the Illuminati card game. So like Charlie Kirk dies, and then you see these videos come out. And the one that stuck out to me that tells me that this is what's happening was him talking about the Jewish donors and the southern border. Like, these Jewish donors really need to get off it because Hias gets all the attention, right? Like Hias's entire purpose, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, formed in New York in the 1800s, again, while all the dispensationalist stuff was happening. All that happens for the last 100 years is we go in the Middle East, we bomb them. The people who are left there absolutely hate us because we bombed them on behalf of Israel, whether they want to take credit for that or not. And then the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society shuffles them into our country and into Europe. This has been happening for 100 years. This displacement of people who hate you being put right in your neighborhood to create another dialectic of immigrant versus native born, which we're seeing that dialectic today. I don't want any H-1B visas. All these dialectics just get created over hundreds and hundreds of years, and they boil to a point at a certain point, and we're boiling at all of them right now. The thing Charlie didn't mention is all the Catholic charities that do the same thing. There are just as many Catholic NGOs as there are Jewish NGOs. 100% do the work. You know, if you look at this, Hias is by far the worst. The highest numbers in the southern border were coming from Hias, but there are like 5 other Catholic organizations that do the same thing. So, but they hate each other, right? Just like Hitler hated the Jews, and Germany hated Israel, and Mossad hates the CIA. It's all big game.
Well, and you mentioned earlier in passing, you mentioned Trotsky and Jabotinsky together, right? Like in 1905. That was when Jabotinsky was in Odessa. That's where he was born, Ukraine. He created the Jewish Defense League, I think is what it was called. It's basically it was like a Jewish militia, right? He then goes on to form the Jewish Legion in the British Army, like under the city of London. I think it was the city of London, like the 20th Infantry or something like that. But it was directly under the city of London, not which I think is somehow separate in the British Army. And
the city of London is just like the Vatican in DC. It's the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then he goes on to create the Irgun, which becomes the IDF. Now,
and they were considered terrorists that entire time.
Yeah, terrorism the entire time. Then they go on to create the IDF. Now you back up to him and Trotsky working together. Trotsky then goes on to become like the leader of the Bolshevik Revolution, the founder, like one of the co-founders of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, the Bolsheviks, the Jewish Bolsheviks, hate the Zionists, right? Israel and Soviet Russia are enemies.
They hate them.
Yeah, like when we mentioned Otto Scorsese, the former SS, the former Hitler's bodyguard, what he's doing from Mossad is he's hunting down all of his old friends who are helping the Soviet Union, like the scientists who are helping the Soviet Union, who are helping like the Egyptians and the Arabs. So like the Zionists and the Bolsheviks hate one another, yet the two founders of those two places were working together in Ukraine before. And then Trotsky goes to Mexico, where he raises with
Papin, another guy named Papin who was part of Hitler's crew as well, went to Mexico.
And then their protege then go on to become moved to New York City and all Eastern European Jews, and then they raise the generation in the 50s and 60s of the Jewish intellectuals who create the neoconservative movement, led by Irving Kristol, among others. 1971, they take over the Republican Party. So the guy
what else happened in 1971, Gordon?
That was when we went off the gold standard, right?
Ah, bingo.
Yeah. So it's like you can trace all this back. I mean, that's just one dialectic, but a lot of different dialectics there. The Republican Party, neoconservatism, the Nazis, the IDF, the Bolsheviks, the Soviet Union. All that just traced back to two guys that were hanging out in Ukraine, happened to be friends. That's just one example.
Yeah.
That's just one example though. And then you could go and find a number of those branches that just branch off and then have significant impact on human history.
Yes, you're 100% right, and that is like a really good way to tie it together. Like, oh, these guys hate each other, but they're good buddies. Or you can see these examples with college roommates. Oh, they were college room, but they became these opposed leaders throughout history, or opposed politicians in Washington D.C. It's all fake. Yeah, all of history is fake. It is all God fulfilling prophecy by elevating evil people and allowing the devil to conduct this dark magic. And you're starting to hear people talking about black magic again. Like, that's real. The Nazis performed black magic. I mean, everybody, but there's also this big push. The Nazis were right about everything. You know, the Jews are so bad. Well, who are they not looking at? They're not looking at the Jesuits. They're not looking at, nobody's talking about Freemasonry anymore. You know, all these things. Yeah. So Charlie Kirk dies. You have no mention of the Catholic people doing the same thing at the border. No mention. And then the day after he dies, you know, the person who's considered, I think Candace Owen won Anti-Semite of the Year or something like that. I think she was like the winner of the biggest online anti-Semite, who converted to Catholicism, who immediately after Charlie died, the first thing she said, this is so sad, because what was Charlie starting to do, Gordon? He was starting to pray the rosary.
Convert to Catholicism, yeah, is what we're told, yeah.
He was seeing the light. He went from the darkness of Zionism to the light of Catholicism. And that's where he's going. And like maybe I'll text it to you later. I screenshot every time I open up Twitter. It's more Catholic propaganda followed by Jewish propaganda. Every first 2 posts I have on Twitter is happening right now. So now you have that. And here are the 2 new dialectics. Have you heard of the 7 Mountain Mandate?
No, but is that related to Rome?
Well, yeah. Rome sits on top of 7 mountains, 7 hills.
Yeah. 7 hills,
which is also Mystery Babylon rides the beast. 7 hills, like it's all kind of coming back to the Protestant Reformation.
Huh.
7 Mountain Mandate is endorsed by all kinds of people because we hear this term Christian nationalist movement. Mm-hmm. So we went from the Dark Ages, which was Christian nationalism run by a monarch, into liberal dark periods of, you know, freedom and all the free speech and, you know, vote your way in or out of things. And now we're talking about Christian nationalism again. Napoleon was a Christian nationalist, Jesuit. Hitler was a Christian nationalist, Jesuit. Now we have Christian nationalism on the rise. The 7 Mountain Mandate is Christians need to take over these 7 pillars of society, like entertainment and movies and education. All goes back to Christ, which is great. I'm a Christian. I love that. I want Bibles back in school, but I don't want people to be forced through an Inquisition style process to find faith. I don't care if they find religion. I want them to find faith. Very different things. When you force religion, it goes back to what Matt was saying. It's religious engineering, not social engineering. We're watching the next phase come about because there's a 7 Mountain Mandate, this initiative to take over the 7 pillars of society, 7 hills, 7 mountains. And then you have the other side of things, which is NAR, which most people don't even know what that is, National Apostolic Reformation. They are now really heavy on this prophecy isn't happening fast enough. We have to start converting the Jews. These are the ones they're Zionist by nature. They're dispensationalists, heavy, really dispensation, very militant. You're starting to see a lot of this stuff like militant Christians. We need warriors for God. All this stuff. That's not what Christ taught at all.
Yes, agreed.
At all. So we have this militant Christian nationalist, which will be tilted towards Catholicism. And the Orthodoxy Church just met in Rome, and they're continuing to have dialogue. The Orthodoxy broke off. They hold, even Lutherans still have, you know, priest collars. It's you talked about the Council of Trent. The reason that I'll get into that. That's a different episode. It gets too spiritual, I think.
Well, to that point, tomorrow I got confirmation, by the way, that we're going to do our GART live stream at 2:30. So awesome. If you're still available, Ash and I are going to do for an hour and a half at 1 o'clock Eastern. She's really been wanting to do like a biblical history dig.
Let's do it.
Like with the geopolitical lens. So yeah, and I ran that by her that you should join us. And so at 1 o'clock tomorrow, we're going to do that. So we'll get much deeper into all this. And this has been a great episode, man. We'll have to have you back because obviously we could just riff for hours and hours and hours.
Yes.
But there is I think it's East Concern in the chat. He's been screaming at me this whole time to ask you this question. So I have to ask you this question.
Is it a mean one?
No. He's asking what your and I don't really have a take on this, but he's asking what is your take? Like, what do you think the Elohim is or are, depending on whether you think it's singular or plural from the Old Testament?
what I think doesn't matter. I mean, I don't get too much into the Elohim. I mean, there are ways to prove the Elohim, and they come directly from Scripture, that we decided to create man in our image.
Yeah. Okay.
So I would think that would be. I don't get too deep into that theologically. The minutia of things like that are interesting. I have a good book around here. Let me see if I can find the title that I read like 10 years ago. Is it in here still? The Unseen Realm. I think is that one of them? I forget which one. Whoever that is, let me know. I'll send them the book that I read talking about the Elohim. I just focus on being a disciple of Christ. I'm not really trying to decipher all of God's mysteries. I'm just trying to watch what happens in the world, pay attention to Him, because in the end of times, that's the weird thing. All these end times prophecies. Here's an interesting story for you, Gordon. So there's a group called the End Times Media, and they were watching. I used to do live streams where I'd talk about all this stuff, money, politics, religion, blend it together. And then YouTube started banning me, and now I can't do live broadcasts. So all I do is pre-recorded interviews that are very earthly, like with politicians, or today I'm going to talk with an immigration lawyer about H-1B visas. I'm just trying to keep my place up there until I decide to go to a different direction and get back into this stuff, which is far more interesting than me. I do Bitcoin stuff and whatever. And by the way, all things on earth are evil. Okay, because everybody's like, oh, cryptocurrency is the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast is not going to be physical, guys. It's going to be something that at the end times, man will worship the beast. They will marvel after the beast. So everybody who thinks communism, oh, it's the end times, the Jews and the third temple and the Messiah and the battle with Islam, these are all Jewish prophecies. They're not Christian at all. And the end times, what I think is going to happen is like AI is going to create false signs and wonders everywhere, like they just did in Mexico. A meteorite, it changed direction. Is that aliens? Is that God? It must be a Catholic thing. But you're starting to see everything come out about Catholicism. Do yourself a favor. Learn this, and go on Twitter, go to a pro-Catholic post and say, just go to AI or whatever and say, Catholic Latin saying salvation through the church. It'll give you the Latin saying. Put it out there and watch how many bots attack you. It's the same if you said something to dispensationalists about the Jews. It's the same attack. It's the same people. They're all the same. Institutional religions are all the same. I don't believe that any now there are good churches and good pastors, but big institutional religions, I think they're all run by the devil. They're all run by the devil to keep us away from the actual heart of Christ, which is why I tell people all the time, you don't need a church. You are the church. You believe in Christ, get together with other people, read scripture, talk about it, decentralize it all. It's all centralized. That's how Schofield got here, because they gave away free Bibles to seminaries. So they all learned this false doctrine and taught it to millions of people after they got out of school. So, I think what we're seeing right now, I think we're going to see this golden age. It'll be a false golden age. I think we will see tremendous war after that golden age, because we'll be promised peace and prosperity, like in 1 Thessalonians. Then just like in Germany and just like in France, you end up in massive wars and all this other stuff. And then the beast will totally take hold. I think that's when you have AI and Christian nationalist laws and all these other things that force religion on people or restrict people from worshiping the way that they want, because there'll be a set standard of what it means to be a Christian nationalist. Just like the Catholics said, you couldn't be Christian unless you were Catholic. So we're going to go from monarchy to free system back to, I believe, a technocratic monarchy. I think that's unavoidable. I don't care how much you love Trump. He's just a man. He's not Jesus Christ. He's a fallible human being like everyone else. And he's the best vote we've ever had in our lifetime from the story we've been told, right? But you watch the stuff that's happening right now. We're just shoveling hundreds of billions of dollars into Jewish and Jesuit organizations that are creating surveillance and AI. And, I'm in this space, so I see it all the time. So I think it's unavoidable that I think we'll have this short period of a golden age, like they saw in Spain, they saw in Germany. History just repeats itself over and over again. And until the days of Christ, people will worship false religion, false teachings, dispensationalism, everything outside of your own understanding of the Bible. And I think that this period of time will be very interesting, because we're watching it. You're watching Orthodoxy combine with Catholicism. Catholicism dominate social media in every possible way. They defend themselves the exact same way the Jews and the dispensationalists do, the exact same offensive measures if you question the authority of the Pope. It's like ever since the Protestant Reformation, the entire goal of the Catholic Church is to embarrass Protestantism so that people come back to them. And they've done a tremendous job doing it, because most Protestant churches are also heretics.
Yeah.
So you have like that Spider-Man.
And you're watching them like merge with Judaism now. Like now it's merging with Judaism through Zionism, and it's all it's like just one dialectic after the next, dialectics within dialectics, and it's wild.
And eventually God's word will come into play. The 10 commandments are all commandments. Thou shalt not, except for one. Remember the Sabbath. That just sticks out to me. Remember the Sabbath. I think that comes into play. There's a couple, I'm not going to take credit for it. I didn't think of that. There's a few guys I've heard talking about this, and it makes tremendous sense to me. The Catholic Church changed the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday. We went through 500 years of Christians who rested on the seventh day on the Sabbath, and they were persecuted, called Judaizers. I think that time is going to come back eventually, and that may very well be the mark of the beast, whether or not you acknowledge that. I don't know. I've heard that from a few people. I'm not going to take credit for that.
Yeah, no, it's very, very interesting. Interesting. Well, man, I appreciate it. We have a few rants. Let's hit these rants. There's I think 4 of them, and then we'll shut this down. Galamo says Fidel Castro studied in a Jesuit school. That's
100% correct.
Yep, did not know that. That's interesting. G Fontes 119. Climate change is certainly a religion. Many can be repeatedly quoted as saying how they believe that XYZ, CO2, etc., about weather in relation to Earth is man-made. Never. I know that it is a fact. Interesting.
And the Pope just blessed a block of ice in favor of climate change.
That was so weird. And then Q of Swords 3, $20. Thank you, Q of Swords. Where does Trump fit in? Is he leading us to a false first golden age? What about his Jesuit education and Freemasonry?
Yeah, he went to Fordham University, which is a Jesuit college. Then he transferred to Penn. His father was a gigantic donor to Talmudic temples. If you know the difference between Judaism, Talmudic is not good. I won't get too much into that, but yeah, his father was a huge donor to. Now, the excuses or the reason, I don't know if it's I don't know. I don't know where Trump fits in. I know that I'm hearing golden age and prosperity and a revival. There is no revival before the end times. That is not, the end times are terrible. They're not like this revival, beautiful time. All the Jews convert. I do think you'll see a lot of Jews convert. The atheist Jews, which is most Jews are actually atheists. They don't believe in much. Like most of Israel is atheist. And I think you'll see them convert to, call it Christianity, but it'll be Orthodox or Christian or Catholic to avoid persecution, or because they find Christ, because God will do that. He will make people find him. But I think that climate change absolutely is a religion. Everything is a religion, and they're going to combine it all. Look at, there's Catholic. There was a Catholic priest that put a video out dancing to some hip hop song, and the lyrics to the song were so offensive. Now, he only played the instrumental, but they're trying to appeal to this younger generation. You have the charismatic speaking in tongues, which is just foolish. That ended at the tabernacle. That was like the last. In order to speak in tongues, there has to be a translator. It's just demonic gibberish, and like chakra tantric stuff mixed with Christianity. It's all been so bastardized since the Protestant Reformation really kicked into gear in the 1800s. You have Mormons claiming to be Christian. You have so they're going to say, all right, this is out of hand. Let's get into ecumenism. We're just going to make a one world religion that blends in all this new age, pagan, Christian, Catholic, Judaism. It'll all be blended into one thing, because can't we just get along? And that's when the beast gets worshipped. This is biblical prophecy.
That's what Ash has been like telling me too for a while, is that she thinks that something like that's going to happen. So
it's happening.
We'll definitely have to talk about that tomorrow for sure. And for the record, my dad actually went. My dad's entire family is Irish Catholic, but he went to Georgetown undergrad, and he went to Fordham. I didn't even realize Fordham was a Jesuit school. He went to Fordham for law school. He when he married my mom, he converted to Episcopalian, which he calls Episcopalian. That's what I was raised in. And he calls Episcopalian Catholic light, because he's like, it
is Catholic light.
Yeah. He was like, it's pretty much just Catholic light. He's like, you just don't have the nuns beating you with rulers, but.
It's like Lutheran. It's very similar to being Lutheran, but yeah, all of these denominations are denominating the nominations of God. That's what's happening. God nominated things, and now we have denominations. I advise everyone to read scripture, to pray and meditate all the time, like talk to God, build your relationship with God, and find yourself around other Christians who are seeking the truth, because in the end times, the great delusion sent upon the earth in 2 Thessalonians, the ones who do not make it are the ones who do not seek the truth. Like, that's why this truth movement brings people closer. in reality, there's some people that are definitely like closer to God who I've met thousands of people during this process, but it is really religionizing things. Join a religion, lift your hands in prayer, speak in tongues, like all these crazy things that don't have anything. Like Christians are called to be calm. We're called to be like the voice of reason in difficult places. That's like people of faith. People of religion are fanatical. Religions really create radicals. There are radicals in every faction, and all you hear about, by the way, all you hear about ever is radical Islam. There's radical Catholics, the Jesuits. There are radical Jews, the Zionists. There are radical Christians.
Yeah, look at Netanyahu's government. It's like, they're definitely radical Jews.
They're radical. So, like, God didn't call you to be radical or zealous. Actually, Jesus pulled the zealot out of zealotry to teach him how to actually be a Christian. So, like, it's all about remaining calm.
Simon, one of the disciples, he was a zealot, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So pulled him out, and he stopped being a zealot.
Simon the zealot.
Yeah, Simon the zealot. So,
and he taught him how evil his ways were, because zealots were designed to kill Romans.
To kill Romans. Yeah.
This is what the Jews have constantly done. They believe that they can physically induce God's prophecy, and that's what you're watching. Is we got to get them to Israel over 100-year period. Now they're in Israel. Now we got to build the third temple. Now we got to have an antichrist. There's like three messiahs in the Middle East right now who are like really well versed. They're clearly constructs, right? Like nobody turns 18 years old in those.
Yeah, there's a young guy in Israel who they're like, this guy, because he had such a firm grasp of the Torah at the young age, he like memorized the whole thing. They're like, he's definitely the Messiah.
So you have
he's like 30.
So read 2 Thessalonians, false signs and wonders, false prophets, false message, that the people who tickle your ears and tell you what you want to hear, the beast will be worshipped.
Yeah.
Period. The beast will be worshipped through AI, through blockchain, all that stuff. Like people are like, oh, Bitcoin's satanic. It's all satanic. Everything on earth, all physical things on earth are satanic. Blockchain is satanic. Gold in this world is satanic. Gold paves the streets in heaven. It's not supposed to be used as money. That's a man-made invention. So everything in this system is going to be satanic. So place yourself in a position where you can have some prominence in the future, and just remain strong to your faith, not your religion. Your religion is leading you astray, in my opinion. There are definitely some good churches that do. I believe that I go to a good church, but I'm sniffing things at my church that I don't like. And as soon as they get into something that offends actual scripture, which I haven't done in 3 years, I will leave. I have my own men's ministry. I will bring 50 people into my living room, and we will read the gospel, talk about the gospel, and love each other. That's what we're taught to do.
Amen. All right. Two more rants. We got Babo Fu. I think I said your name right. Wherever three of you are gathered in my name.
Two or more.
Two or more. Yeah. And then the last one is, this is a fitting end, is Isle of White Privilege. Jesus is the way and the light. That's a hilarious nickname, but a great message. Amen to that. Yeah, man. And on that note, I'll just say, everyone, please hit the thumbs up. Eric, thanks so much for joining us. We definitely are going to have you back. This has been an amazing conversation. Look forward to doing this again tomorrow with Ash, because Ash is very well versed in scripture. So y'all are going to riff in the same way that you and Matt were able to riff, but just to a different vibration. So it's going to be a really, really great conversation.
Can't wait.
Looking forward to that, man. All right, guys, we will see you tomorrow. We're going to go out with the soft disclosure ad, and we will see you later on.
God bless you all. Thank you for having me, Gordon. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Deodorant should do more than cover you up. It should protect you all day long.
Dude, the deodorant stick is legit. I like the mint one. And, you go work out and you kind of get like, you get funky if you work out. Dude, like at the end of my workout, like I'm sweating, shirt got all those sweat. Like I'm like, dude, I still smell good. Like I absolutely love it. If you guys haven't tried it, try it.
That's the difference with soft disclosure. No aluminum, no chemicals, just clean, natural ingredients that fight odor and keep you fresh through every workout, every meeting, every moment.
I've always struggled with the, you can't use aluminum deodorant because you're going to die if you use it kind of thing, because all of the non-aluminum deodorant products suck pretty much. This is different. This is all day. You're all day good, and you're not putting any of that disgusting chemicals right near your lymph nodes.
Soft Disclosure deodorant, real protection, real freshness, built on truth. Available in mint and lemon grapefruit. Visit softdisclosure.com and use promo code Badlands for 15% off.
Soft Disclosure. Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.